Righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arete podcast. I am joined this time by my friend and life changer. I don't think that's an overstatement. Kyler of Self Help Fitness. Kyler, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Fun fact: I was actually doing some of the wall poses before we got started here.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That was a lot more painful than I thought it was gonna be.
We'll talk about that for sure.
I mean, I was shocked. Like literally, I didn't think like I thought I was gonna feel it, but I didn't know I was gonna feel that much. Which, not that I doubted you, but you were right. When you don't change your body positions very often, for reasons that you'll get into, your body gets pretty set in its ways.
Yeah, and a lot of what personal training is it's already changing in some ways or how the gym scene goes. But what I talk to clients about is, I'm trying my job is mostly to expose you. I mean, obviously you have goals, and each person, whether it's weight loss or whatever. But the main thing that I have to do is expose you, so that you can see what you can't do and why you can't get to your goals, especially like we talked about before with obesity not going down. And interestingly, pain is going up, and there's almost as many people in pain as there are overweight or obese. And pain is a big issue here. Like I've talked about as far as people don't realize when you're in pain. You might think about, if you've been through it maybe, but it keeps you from wanting to work out. That's one thing that people that are in pain know. If your knee hurts, you're less likely to go do stuff. But I also tell people, even if you're not in pain, part of what the flexibility work does is it exposes you to how tight you are, and you don't realize how much clogged up kinetic energy you have. And so, for example, let's say you have to walk a couple flights of stairs every day during work. You don't realize how exhausting that is for your body, and all this is adding up throughout the day. So you open up your body with flexibility, mechanical training, and all of a sudden you're gliding up the steps in comparison, which is something I've experienced and my clients have experienced and stuff. And you get to the top of the stairs because even as an athlete, when I wasn't super flexible, like if I walked a few couple flights of stairs, I'd get to the top and my hamstrings would start to have a pump. So I can see where I'm wasting energy here in a sense. Whereas now, it's like I go upstairs and I don't even feel it. It's a very weird. It's much weird. It's very weird because I didn't, it's just to get up to the top, and it's like, yeah, that was nothing. And like I was carrying some stuff earlier when I was getting this chair over here and organized and getting set up for you. And with the mechanical training and stuff and the flexibility, carrying stuff, it's like my biceps aren't burning up, so I'm not overusing all this energy. And overall, I think people don't realize that it's not just pain, because like, people in the beginning of the year, everybody starts working out. And before you know it, you kind of quit because, like I tell people now, if you train for mechanics, you will get aesthetics. But what people do is they go in and they train for aesthetics, and they get a great workout, maybe they feel sweaty and stuff. But in 3 months, if you're not sleeping better, if it's not easier for you to cook and clean, make food, play with your kids, do outdoor stuff, if it's that stuff's not easier, then it's really not very valuable to you because you get to where you're tired. Like, okay, I did it for 3 months. I got some results. Maybe I didn't. I'm not, it's kind of plateauing and I'm kind of over it because you're just focusing on aesthetics. And I hear it all the time, hey, I've been working my chest for 2 years. My butt, it's not growing. What do you think it is? And I know it's mechanics because you have poor mechanics. So when you're going to train these things, you're not getting blood, water, electricity, or oxygen into them properly, so your chest isn't growing, and you're trying all these different angles, listening to all these bodybuilders and all this other stuff who are training for aesthetics, and you're just hoping you find the right angle, the right program. But mechanical training and doing flexibility work like the book you're doing, it opens up the blood, water, electricity, and oxygen to every tissue, and it aligns the bones, it releases the knots in the tendon, muscle, ligament structure. So so now we're getting blood flow, and now like I have very brown muscles, but that's because I have a lot of flexibility. It's because I'm doing mechanical training, so my muscles are nice and round like they should be, and everything's balanced. So that's kind of a gist of a little bit of what, when we're talking about pain, and what you're saying is doing the wall stretches, maybe you're not in a lot of pain, but you start doing them.
Oh, I was in
Um,
a lot of pain. I mean,
and then
I don't want to make it sound like it was like unbearably painful, but I talked about this last time we talked. My hamstrings have been super tight for years, but what I didn't realize until I became acquainted with your work is I always assumed it was just tight hamstrings. It's tied to my lower back, which is tied to my upper back, which is tied to my neck. And fun fact, tight neck, tight hamstrings, tight lower back, and it's all
right,
connected. So when I was doing those wall positions, I felt it everywhere, but in particular my lower back and my hamstrings, because that's kind of where we're connected. Um,
absolutely.
I'm going to let you dig real deep into this just real quick. I want to let everyone know, because we've got some people watching live. If you have any questions for Kyler, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'll let him know. And same for, because you're live on TikTok as well, correct? So
Yeah, the same
every,
here. TikTok, if you guys
yeah,
got questions.
we love questions. We love conversation, but I will kind of let you go. And I know what everybody who's watching this live or later is probably thinking right now. It's like, okay, I get what he's saying, but how do I fix it?
Right. Absolutely. So let me screen share to start with, and we'll just go over because a lot of this is, as everybody's understanding, is how your mind views your body does make a difference. So what we've done in the past is we've done what we'd say is very compartmentalized training, where we are, training and thinking of just the hamstring, okay, and all this, and just the biceps and all this stuff. So you guys should be able to see my cursor. So just for example, we're not going to go through all of these, but it's important that you understand how this is working because it is going to change how you deal with your workouts, how you think about it, how your body moves energy, and ultimately get you out of pain, which I believe, as you get out of pain, it'll help us reduce obesity officially too, and start working towards that. Because when you start feeling better beyond, like I said, when you're training for mechanics and you're going to the gym and you're not just getting a pump and feeling good, but you're leaving and you're going, hey, like I had a client that had started, and after a month, she's about 68. So after a month of doing the flexibility work, doing mechanical training, she says, hey, Kyler, and again, she's 68, retired. She says, I just worked out in my yard for 3 hours with no pain. And so for somebody
Wow.
that for that age, and now everybody responds differently. That doesn't mean that you're going to have that response. It just depends on how athletic you've been, how much nodding you have, how much work you put into it. But that made a huge difference to her in her life because that's something that she can live through every day, as opposed to, okay, my biceps got bigger. I think, do they look bigger? Is my diet right? Like there's so much other stuff. So when we're looking at these lines, we'll go through a couple that I think are important to understand. So what you're seeing here is obviously the bone structure, and what they're doing, Anatomy Trains with Dr. Thomas Myers, what he's done is showing you here through the blue and the white how this is all one kind of piece. Meaning, so if we look at this far one on the left, so let's say you're having pain, like a lot of people have pain here in the rhomboid. You're seeing where I'm pointing there. So when people are having pain there, you can see where it's going to start to crinkle, and it can affect anywhere in this line. And this line actually attaches to the front forehead above the eyebrows. So imagine if and it sounds silly at first, but once you realize, so everything's always being used, right? So even if it's 0.001%, you could say you're still affecting. So let's say you're doing calf raises. It has a 0.00, I don't know, we don't have the exact statistic on it, but it's still affecting the skull in some way, right? So you're isolating the calf because it's pulling. Like they'll show you in the Anatomy Trains book, it's like a spider web. If you pull anywhere on the spider web, it starts affecting the rest of the web, and the closer you are to the pole, the more dramatic the effect's going to be. So imagine if this back superficial back line is connected to the eyebrows, and you're walking around angry all the time, then you're always pulling on it. You know, but more so when you look at it, like if you have tight hamstrings, like you were saying, from sitting, tight quads, whatever, you got an injury to the calf, it's going to begin to affect all these areas. And this is why we notice people. So if let's say we go to the front, superficial front line here, this is why, like with clients and people, if you pay attention to your injuries and stuff, if somebody has an injured, say, left hip here, right? So it'll injure here and the body will compensate up in here to the shoulder. And this isn't all the lines, just so everybody understands. This is just the main ones so you can understand it. Because I don't think the average person needs to know everything there is to know about the fascial lines because there are a lot of layers overlapping, but you need to start getting an idea of it so that when you're working out, when you're doing your quads, you're understanding I'm working my abs a little bit. Okay. And if I'm having pain, and then again, that's what the books are for. I got the first flexibility book, and as we get the other one out, the mechanical book, it'll help you guys organize all this stuff. But what we see in clients, like take one of my clients that I work on. So I work on him and then train him, right? So his left hip is bothering him, real tight hip flexor, right? But then his right shoulder's bothering him because it's crossing to compensate. Okay. So to move forward real quick, so the this one here is interesting because everybody knows about the IT band. Most people have heard about their IT bands, and it's also oops, go back. You can do that. So this IT band here, um, it's one of the tightest spots because of sitting, and it's also the band that your body, every movement you do, your body tries to generate energy from this IT band. It's very interesting. But if you look at this, you can see where it attaches at the foot. It goes through the rib cage here and goes up into the neck. So imagine you're sitting all day, you're tightening this up. So where is it going to cause pain as well? It's going to tighten up the side of the neck as well.
Oh, so basically you've just explained my chronic headaches.
Right. So, and this is where, because headaches used to be take medication, but more and more so they realize it's muscular, but the muscle nodding is controlled by the fascia tissue we know now. So, the way I kind of explain it is your bone structure is controlled by your tendon, muscle, ligament structure, right? And how tight or loose it is, but that's controlled by these fascial lines and where they decide to knot because the fascia is trying to keep your bones from touching. It's trying to optimize the performance of the shapes you're making each day. So if you're sitting all day, your body's trying to optimize that performance, but it goes to sleep, and it's like I've been sitting for 10 years straight and it's trying to optimize that. And so what it's doing within these layers is it may knot up your abs. Like a lot of people have knotted abs because you know how everybody has that lower belly fat they can't get off? It's not just fat, it's fascia that's been knotting up from people sitting in their bellies. Okay. And so this is what's causing some hip issues and it's rotate and everything. So you can just see how, again, it's all interconnected and it's going. This is again. So if you hit your head and you hurt your neck, it may affect your knee, or like for me, when I fell one time real hard rollerblading, I hit right here and it went down into my knee and went up into my shoulder. And again, this isn't all the layers because all these are overlapping as well. So you can see how like this functional line at the back right here with the lat, glute, hamstring interconnection, it's overlapping with this line as well. Okay, so this is your spiral line, for example. Now these are two pieces. So this one starts on this side of the neck and then it wraps around the body and attaches to the foot. It is what helps you turn your body. It's because these are mechanical lines, meaning that when you turn your body, right? So say you're running and you know how your torso is designed to create torque.
I was just
So
going to bring that up. Yeah.
yeah, so the torso, it's in the word, is designed to create torque. So this spiral line here is what's turning the torso. But again, the tighter it gets, based on how tight this guy is, this guy, you see how they're all interconnected because your brain's very smart and it's trying to manage all these at the same time and knows where they should be. And again, trying to keep the bones from touching. But the big guy that's real hard to get to is here. So you can
Mm.
see that these are all lines, right? In a sense, they're kind of over the bone, but this is your protector here of your spine up into your skull and your jaw, and it's wrapped around that spine inside the rib cage. I can't massage that. You know what I'm saying? So this is where flexibility training and moving all these lines to open this deep fascia so that we can move the spine back in place, open the rib cage back up and get everything. So again, it's trying to help people understand that in the past we thought very compartmentalized with everything. So we would say, here's my back, here's my arm, my bicep. And for example here, let me show you guys real quick. Where'd it go?
Just remind anyone, any questions you may have, go ahead, throw them in the chat. Don't be shy. No need to raise your hand.
All right. Where is the arm
And if
line?
you have trouble raising your hand, let Kyler know, and he can tell you how you can loosen that shoulder up.
So look at your arm line, for example. So you can see they're showing different layers here, but this is one interconnected piece. Okay, so again, what we want to is get people away from thinking, I'm curling my bicep. You're not just curling your bicep. All of this is being worked at the same time. Okay, so if your tricep is tight, it's gonna, because it's attached to your scapula, it's gonna pull on your scapula. If your biceps tight, it's gonna pull on your scapula, but it's gonna pull on this whole network here. Okay, so same thing with the pec line. So you can see where this pec line here even is going down into the hand and in the forearm. So if your forearm's tight, your pecs are gonna have some tightness probably too. But everyone, everyone's body tightens up differently as well. So that's part of, but we don't really know, because I don't have a machine that I can scan you and say, here's where every little knot is, and here's exactly what you should do. We haven't gotten that far. Hopefully, maybe we do. But the goal is for you guys to change your mind and reorganize it and start thinking, um, about how this is, just one big piece. So, instead of thinking like if you're doing, say crunches or abs or whatever, just think about how this is all one piece. So when I do my abs, I understand like if I pull my legs up to do a hanging leg raise, I understand all these different interconnections that I'm making and I'm paying attention to them. So if I lift my legs up and my right leg doesn't go as far, I'm thinking about that side and maybe there's some other work that needs to be done. Um, that's most of what we're trying to help people understand from a basic standpoint of what fascia tissue is. I lost the pictures. I'm not good at this. But I think you guys I mean, I guess, Jake, do you get if you understand it, maybe they understand what we're trying to say is like, here's what I was saying is like when you're doing abs, you're working all this stuff. So, for example, most people have really bad pinky toes, as you know. People have funky pinky toes. Well, and it turns out, whoops, the pinky toe is connected to that IT band heavily. So what are the odds that people are sitting a lot, their IT band is getting extraordinarily tight, and then your pinky toe looks funky?
Well, yeah, and that's when, because I know in a lot of aspects of in different kinds of yoga, there's a lot of emphasis on making sure you stretch the toes because they're often neglected.
Yes, and here's the thing: the hands and the feet, right, represent the strength of the rest of the line, right? So what I try to tell people, because even though it's more complicated, that I try to say, look, from your belly button and around your back, that's one chunk of your leg. Given it's not, but this is an easier way to think of it. This is one chunk. This is one chunk. Your pec and your upper back. This is one chunk of arm. And I was just saw that this was on the local news. They were talking about how hand grip, right? It gives us an idea of how susceptible you are to Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's interesting because again, if the hand is hyper connected to the skull and up into the tightness of this, so we're getting there with the science because a lot of people don't understand that up until 1998, 99, they took all this fascia tissue and they just threw it out in anatomy. In anatomy books, there was nothing about fascia tissue. So you can imagine all the stuff we learned about the human body up until 1998, 99. They're just throwing this tissue away. They didn't think there was a point to it.
Which that's sort of the next question I think that begs to be answered is, for those who may not know, can you just explain what you mean when you're talking about fascia tissue?
So let's see. Let's do it real quick. So one way to explain it would be, so you can see some images here. When you eat steak and there's that film on it, that's fascia, that little thin film. But what you have to understand about fascia is it is everywhere. So it's like soup stock is a good way to explain it. When you make soup, right? The soup stock is all around the beef, the vegetables, but then as you cook it, it's inside the vegetables, right? So the fascia is around the organs, it's through the organs, it's around the muscles, it's around every filament of muscle. It's around, I mean, your body is mostly fascia tissue. So, and you can see some pictures here of how it's interconnecting and it looks web-like we said. And here's some examples of them showing kind of how it has big sheaths and interconnects, but it's in all these filaments. All this white stuff is fascia that they're showing here. So it's around the muscle belly. So you have bigger pieces, you have much smaller pieces. It's in the organs. Here's a live image of it and how much of it. It's very sticky, but we don't want it to be sticky, because when it's sticky, that's a knot, that's pain, possibly. That's an area you can't feel. We want this stuff to be pliable. We want it to be moving kinetic energy, blood, water, allowing blood, water, and electricity and oxygen to move through. Because when you have a pinched nerve, well, what is it? It's a bunch of fascia that's tightened up around that area, and now the nerve is closed off. When you have a knotted muscle, same thing. If there's a knot in this muscle, it's because the fascia within it has binded up, because it's trying to protect the body in some fashion, or it's reacting to a heavy stimulus of being hit, per se. So, and maybe this, so here's superficial fascia. It's just lies beneath the dermis, consists of loose connective tissue, adipose. It's in everything. So, and it's
What?
around
Yeah,
everything.
but what is the function of it?
Well, the function of it is to keep you glued together, because without it, your organs would just be fumbling around in your body. Your muscles wouldn't have. So here's what we know about fascia as well: is fascia has 5 to 6 times more neurons than muscle tissue. And fascia is a third brain, or I would just say it's an extension of the brain. So you're a giant brain, because it's coming right out of the brain. And they're saying it's a third brain. So it's a third hemisphere, but it's not a hemisphere, right? And so its function is to control your mechanics. It's to control the knotting of the body, like I said. So it'll knot up the tendon, muscle, ligament structure, because again, it's trying to protect the bones, or maybe it incurs a heavy hit from being punched or something. It's trying to keep your organs in place, because they have a place they're supposed to be. It's controlling blood, water, electricity, and oxygen to every tissue throughout the body, because as it tightens up, it's not only that you lose kinetic energy into that area, which is electricity, but as it binds up, if it binds up a muscle, like a trigger point, now we're not getting blood, water, electricity, or oxygen into that muscle. And then pain sometimes incurs, or eventually the pain goes away. Why does pain go away if you have a knot? Because it's gotten so tight that the nerves are dead, because it chokes it so hard. So it's organizing with your brain, or again, I would say an extension of your brain. It's organizing, the mechanics. And again, I think mechanics, I say that because you think of like a car mechanic, how he's keeping track of everything in your car, what's running, where things should be. It's doing the same thing, except you're just organic tissue, and there's a lot to keep track of. So and another thing is fascia. So the brain takes a picture of the fascia every 1.6 seconds. So whatever shape you're in, it's always taking pictures, and then it collects them at night, and that's why it decides what to knot up and do. So depending on what shapes you made during the day, what kind of stress you put on the body exercise wise, that's where it's controlling how it's knotting up and stuff. So this is why you slowly get tighter over time, right? Because let's say you're not working out, you're sitting for 10 years, and every night your body's collecting all these pictures of what shape you are, and ultimately it's slowly knotting you up and slowly closing you in on your spine, in a sense. Does that answer that for you, or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. I believe so. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. But so might be a dumb question, but
Oh,
does fascia have any relation with muscle performance, or is that pretty
absolutely.
negligible? Oh, really?
So
Okay.
so because again, since it's controlling the knotting of the muscle, right? So if I want my muscle to be nice and healthy, right? Because again, think of the four structures that you need in every tissue. Every tissue needs blood, water, I'm going to say it probably 100 times, electricity, and oxygen, so that it can move kinetic energy through it properly, right? So from a sports performance part, if my quads are tightening up, so the fascia is, I've been sitting, so the brain's trying to again protect my body, and it's like, hey, we need to shorten those muscles, we need to tighten the quads, because he's sitting all day, and some of it just can't fight, like it can't fight sitting. It is what it is. um so it's tightening those muscles up. And now let's say you've been sitting for 5 years, and you get up, and you've probably seen Friends and family do it where they were athletes in high school and they've been sitting on the job for 5 years, and then you're at a bar, at a barbecue or something, and they go to do something athletic and they fall on their face, or they're like, my legs aren't working the way they want. It's because they've been knotting up through the fascial system, the mechanics, through those lines that we were showing you, you know. So fascia lines. So these lines are knotting up, and as they're knotting up from your sitting and stuff, they're closing the muscle, because you think of a muscle as like a hydraulic system that opens and closes in a sense. So it does a lot of weird stuff because it closes it, it creates trigger points, it'll pull on it in all sorts of weird ways. It's kind of like bridges. I always tell people that your bone is like a bridge. I don't know. Hold on 1 second. So like your bone is like a bridge, right? And so a bridge, you think about cars only going over one aspect of it, right? But with this bone, it needs to be able to have cars go on every angle, meaning it needs to be able to put tension in every angle, not just here, but it needs to go here. There's tension in every possible angle. So the fascia is intertwined with all this. It's like the cables of a bridge, but if you had a bridge that had cars driving in 360 degrees around it, and it's trying to manage all these cables depending on what pressure is being put on what damage has been done where. So that's where it controls the body mechanics, and it's in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, again, I'm trying to ask questions that somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
never heard, because I have the
Sure.
benefit. I read your book, and obviously we had a prior interview for those who don't know. You can check that on the Average Intelligence podcast channel. Um, but I guess the next thing I would like to kind of go over before we get into, okay, now we know what fascia is. We know it's a problem for a lot of people. We want to let people know how to fix it. But before that, what, like, kind of just take me through how you discovered this. What's the journey that you took? Because I know you were a bodybuilder in the past. I mean, I think
Right.
you still are, but I mean, you were obviously a different kind of bodybuilder.
Yeah. Well, mostly what happened is I was arrogant because I was an athlete and I had never dealt with pain, and I competed, did a lot of other athletics and stuff. Um, but I guess in a gist, I stopped bodybuilding. So at my heaviest as a bodybuilder, I was 220 pounds and in good shape, not overweight. So I had a lot of muscle, and then I just quit. So imagine, fascially speaking, now I can see it in retrospect, but I came out of my mother's womb climbing trees, being an athlete. I had taught my fascia to be hyper athletic. And then I built a bunch of tissue on top of it, which really my body, was too much at the end of the day, probably for sure. So, I'm walking around all big and everything. And then I just stopped working out. And so I'm sitting at work. I'm not doing those patterns anymore. And I'm not keeping the body open. And my body started to knot up heavily. So it got to the point that the pain was so bad. It was about, the pain started, and I remember going into bench press because I hadn't worked out in a while, and I felt very uncomfortable. And I'd never felt uncomfortable. And I always laugh at myself because I tell people when I was younger, people would ask me if I stretched, and I would laugh and say, I don't need to do that. That's a waste of my time. I don't do flexibility. I don't need that. But I did need it because my knees were killing me then. But imagine, I worked with an IFBB pro coach. He knew my knee was killing me. I hired all sorts of high-end coaches. Not one of them ever told me I should do flexibility. Not one of them ever explained fascia because we still didn't know that much back then in 2008, 2010. Definitely Anatomy Trains wasn't out like it is now. Like, it wasn't known. But even then, with all my pain, like I remember because I was managing gyms, so I had I got access to things. Like I remember one time doing an assessment on a chiropractor, telling them about my problem, and for free, the guys in the gym trying to work on me and these knots that I'm having. And this is before the pain got bad. So I was already having a couple issues and stuff, but my knees were killing me. I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at 14 with my knees because they were just the size of balloons, and I had to work through that. Um, so, I was arrogant, and it basically crippled me because I took a period. How do I only took probably, let me think here, probably about a year and a half off. And but I didn't do anything but work and sit all day, at the gym, sit in front of the computer. I'm training clients a little bit, but I'm not really doing anything. But a lot of it is because I had so much muscle tissue. If I hadn't had so much, there wouldn't have been so much to knot up. And again, like when I quit bodybuilding, I was bench pressing 405 for sets of 10. So you can imagine how strong that tissue was. Now I wasn't squatting as much because my knees hurt, but with bodybuilding, it was, as long as my legs were getting bigger, it didn't matter. But bench, I was very strong in other exercises. And then I just stopped working out. So now I see how I stopped doing those pattern movements and my fascia started knotting up into this new position. But because I had so much tissue also, it knotted up very heavily. And so it started with a little bit of pain, but I couldn't get it out in my shoulder. And it really got progressively worse very quickly, within a year. And then I couldn't train at all. And so I spent like 2 or 3 years trying to train, but couldn't, not sure, what's going on here. And doing what everybody's saying to do. I'm foam rolling. I'm doing the foam rolling with the ball. I'm going to chiropractors, and I still hadn't done much stretching then. I didn't appreciate flexibility work. That was boring to me. But I would do some and I would see some extent to it, but I still hadn't wrapped my head around because I hadn't seen the fascia lines. So it still was like if I did the wall stretches I show you, when I first learned those, that was before I learned fascia, right? But I wasn't thinking about how it was manipulating my back. And I see now how, knowing that it manipulates my back, how I can use it to manipulate my back even heavier. Because when you're thinking it's just in the legs, you're really just seeing it in the legs. And maybe you get lucky and you notice your back's feeling better. Um, and then there was about a 2 year period of time where I struggled to get out of bed most days. And I would have these bursts. And I think about my family and stuff where I would go outside and I would go and jump around and act crazy. But man, would I pay for it. So it was a fight. So I'd have some weeks where I felt a little bit better. And when I did, I'd be like, let me go try a bunch of stuff. But it was I could never get it out. And I'm a very hyper person, naturally. Very hyper. So I always have all this energy. So it's hard to keep someone like me down, even in all the pain that I was. And so basically, I spent a couple years very out of pain, and I was still trying to train clients and stuff. And I remember, honestly, Jake, and I know some people probably don't believe this, but I remember training people and stuff, and I don't think anybody knew how serious it was and how much pain I was in. But I remember sitting down and crying and thinking, I'm never going to train again. Like, the one thing I loved to do with my body, I'll never enjoy again. One, and I'm going to have to teach other people how to work out the rest of my life, knowing that I don't really get to. I'll never be able to do it. And I remember I settled with that for a while. And then I discovered Dr. Thomas Meyer's book and Anatomy Trains with the fascia lines, and I saw them. And, it was just one of those things, because even the work I'm teaching, like, this isn't anything yet, but this is where we're trying to make it something. And more people are doing work on fascia. This is why it's one of those things where it's not just me. Dr. Thomas Myers is trying to do his work with massage therapists and get them to understand the fascial lines. So when they're doing work on people, they're not doing the old massage, where we just dough an area or whatever. Like, you're seeing how the interconnective lines work. So my place is with the mechanics of the body in the gym and through flexibility and stuff. But I saw the fascia lines and I just looked at them and I thought, this is weird, because I'm into math. I've always loved math. I'm good at math, and loved magnetism. And the way I look at the world is kind of weird, I guess. I'm not a very social person. I like to do this stuff, and I don't have any friends, really, never have. And I know that because I don't do well with that stuff. I like to do numbers and do these things. And I was looking at the fascia lines, and the first one I did was a push-up. I got in the push-up position, and I'm looking at the fascia lines of the arms, and then I'm thinking about how magnetism and everything around us rotates and generates torque. And I thought, well, what if those lines that I'm seeing when I'm doing a push-up, what if I'm supposed to move through the lines and not through the muscles? Okay, so it's like I'm looking at this fascial line and I'm thinking, what if I start envisioning it as one thing and I start generating torque and using my hand? And the first push up I did, I started doing them, and all of a sudden my elbow, hand, and shoulder and neck started cracking into place like I was at the chiropractor.
So you were envisioning the push-up mechanic not as basically just an extension of the chest and a little bit of arm, but you were looking at it more as I'm trying to understand what you mean.
Well,
So
think of
was
it
there?
this way. You know how when you do stuff, you just do it?
Yeah,
Like when you do a push up, like you don't really have a place for your elbows. You're just moving, right? So I just go down into it and I try to feel my chest. I didn't do that. What I did is I grabbed so I'm looking at the lines and I grabbed the ground. And as I came in, I tried to grab this whole line here instead of just because when I'm doing push-ups before, it's like my arms are here, but they're not really doing, I'm not really thinking about them. And I'm just trying to move through the pec,
right,
just trying
right,
to,
right.
right. I wasn't doing that. I came and I rotated in and I tried to grab from my hand and I tried to grab this whole fascial line in the inner part. And then when I pushed up, I pushed outwards. So I started generating torque, but obviously my hand's staying in one place on the ground.
Okay,
Okay.
hang on. I gotta try this. One
So,
sec.
and I'll keep
All right.
going, I guess. But so I'm trying to generate torque. So instead of just moving, because trainers talk about form, and we say, well, if you do shoulders up more, it's going to be upper pec. But this is because of how the lines are being moved.
Okay, that
and
was
you may
different.
and you may not feel it right. See, here's the thing too, is you got to build your brain. Like think of
It
it this way. Your
it
brain's
was
trained.
hard. Yeah, it was hard to do. Like not difficult, but it was hard to break the old habit of doing a push-up.
That's one thing. And then it takes more kinetic energy because since I'm having you use more angular tension, right? So we're moving in more angles, you're going to use more kinetic energy, but also you're going to cover more angles. And this is part of what we talk about at the gym. If you go in the gym and you just do dumbbell presses like this all the time, what are you teaching your arm to do?
That,
Just do
yeah.
this. So what happens when you go to play with your kid? You got to throw something or throw a frisbee. Your arm's been doing this. So when I do like dumbbell presses, we do different versions of them, but like we have one version where we're at the top here. So which one is it? Sorry, even my brain gets confused sometimes. So when we come down, we're rotating out and then rotating in, come down with it out, rotate in. So I'm doing these rotations as I'm moving. Okay. So then I'm creating all this angular tension. So then, like the other day, I went and played frisbee with my kids, and it's interesting because I can see how this is really affecting me. In the past, since I was a bodybuilder and I'm just pushing heavy weight, gosh forbid you ask me to go and play basketball. Like it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas now, or if I had to throw something. So I'm outside with the kids, and because I've built in all this angular tension, and you can see where my hands can rotate, and I'm not just pushing things, because it's not just in the bench press. You think every movement I'm doing, like if we're doing laying down, tricep stuff, like I'm rotating this hand. I'm trying to create rotation and everything and not do this and not beat in the same pattern all the time. Because you know how people are and how trainers and influencers are. They'll say, this is the best exercise for triceps. Well, that doesn't even make sense because your tricep needs to be able to build tension in every angle. So what you should do is every single grip that they have available in every tricep exercise, you kind of should do every single one of them in every angle possible so that it's used to as many angles as possible. So that when I go out to play with my kids like I did, and I'm just, I know bodybuilder me throwing a frisbee, I would have been like, that's so gunky of a movement because I don't do it. Whereas I'm like seeing how hard I can flip this thing because I have so much, torque that I can create through every tissue at this point. So it started with the push up, my hands were here. And instead of just moving, I was like rotating things in, rotating out, rotating out, rotating in. I'm seeing how I need to build torque because you understand, Jake, that everything turns, there's tornado, everything's turning, right? Everything's
Mm.
creating torque, and torque is the best way to create energy. And then you have your torso. It's in the word torque, right? So your
Well, but
torso needs
even yeah, even those of us that are in martial arts, when you throw
a
when
punch, you
uh,
twist.
yeah, well, but literally like a jab loads up the straight, or if you're left-handed,
Yeah.
whatever. When you throw a kick properly without hurting yourself, because you can definitely throw a kick. Like if you can throw a round kick and not turn your hip, but
Right,
you're going to hurt yourself.
right.
Like if you don't injure yourself, it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're probably going to injure yourself. But your hip turns over, you're
Everything's turning.
yeah, you're stable. The leg that you're standing on turns, because if you don't, your knee will pop. I know from experience.
Unfortunately,
Trust me, you want that knee to move if you execute it properly. And not only is that where the power comes from, but that's where
power
it,
comes from.
well, your power comes from it, but also just that's the important part for the kick, right? But yeah, the power comes from your hip turning over, not from your foot moving quickly. Because
Right, because it's
I
building kinetic
can
energy. Right, because you're
exactly
trying to relieve that
because
kinetic energy.
yeah,
Kind of like when you're bowling,
I can
you
do
bowl,
this.
you're
Yeah,
striking.
exactly. I can do the exact same motion, but without turning my hip. It's night and day difference in terms of the power I can generate. One hundred
And the
percent. Yeah.
reality is in balance, we should be able to do all things. Like one thing I say to people is you could have enough flexibility to do the splits, even if you can't, or contort yourself into a box. Now, will 99% of people get that much flexibility? Do they need to? No. But from a balance perspective, just as much as you should be able to kick people, say from a dead stance, you should be able to do it with being able to generate energy, because both of those maybe you might have to do both of those in real life. And so a lot of it is I started with the push up, and then you get, and then like I said, I went into looking at, as I do, because I'm a bodybuilder, but I'm also a trainer and doing all sorts of stuff, and I was an athlete and track and stuff. So um it started with the push up, but then before I knew it, I'm just doing it in everything I can possible. And that's where the second book will expand on all the different angles you should try to do. So, for example, we've been taught, we'll just stay with the bench press. Like if you're on the bar, technically, right, you should be able to you should bench with your hands all the way together, like that range of motion. You can see how much range of motion I have in my wrist now to do that. I didn't before, but you should have this range of motion all the way out. So every angle you should be able to move in. But what do people do? They go to the bench and they say, "This is my grip for all time." But, and then even in bench press and powerlifting, they'll teach you when you're powerlifting to grab the bar, even though you can't break the bar, right? They teach you to generate torque and bend your thumb into the bar. So a lot of the sports and stuff are already doing this stuff. But at some point, somebody's going to come along and collaborate it all together and say, look at how everybody's telling everybody to generate torque. There's a reason why, and it's because of the fascia lines, because they're determining your kinetic energy. Because again, this arm is one whole line. This never works dependently by itself, this pec. It is all one piece. So the weaker my bicep is, it's going to affect the pec, and so on and so forth. So I want these to all be balanced. So for example, like the elbow and the knees, you've heard of people hyperextending their knee and elbow. Well, what if you were told that you were supposed to be able to build tension into hyperextension? And the reason that you can't is why when you step into a hole and hyperextend your knee, it gets hurt. But who are the people that are hyperextending their elbows and knees? Gymnasts. So wait a second. The most fit people on the planet, gymnasts, most flexible, strongest people by body weight, are hyperextending their elbows and hyperextending their knees. Okay. And then you also see powerlifters in Olympics doing it when they get that bar above their head. They have that elbow and that arm straight out and hyperextended. They don't hold the bar like this because that's not the most efficient place. It's in hyperextension. So the reason I say this is when we're working out and people are doing arms, what are they always telling you with the tricep? Don't go all the way down and stuff like that. But this elbow wants to lock out. It needs to lock out. And that has a place. And so if I never lock it out, then the elbow never heals and never builds any strength, and then somebody's coming at you, or you fall. A lot of it's you fall, right? And you put your arm out to grab yourself, and you hyperextend your elbow because you haven't trained it into hyperextension.
Yeah, once again, I can speak to that personally. All of my injuries have either been, it's been one of two things. It's been being stupid or it's been doing something that's completely mundane. Like even if I'm doing something sport, like the last time I tweaked my knee and actually I got super lucky. I didn't permanently damage it, but I definitely like I heard a pop.
Yeah.
I was doing some training, but what I actually did was I just turned and didn't turn my foot as quickly as I should have.
Right. And
So
you had, and you could, because you're not training and it's not your fault, right? But your body can't build tension into every angle yet. So when you go into weird angles, what's it going to do?
exactly. But then
It's,
you see these guys that are, I call them like the calisthenics guys, who that's exactly what they do is they train at weird all angles.
right.
And these guys are just freaks, like what they can do. And they're
Right.
strong. Like they're freakishly strong for the frame that they
And
have.
imagine they're just doing body weight calisthenics. Imagine once they understand fascial lines and they add, because people have asked me, where's this work going? And it's like, well, this work is applicable to everyone. Every sport is going to benefit from this. You know, calisthenics, because I watch all their videos, they're not talking about fascial lines. And I know the difference because I can do calisthenics. And when I do them integrating the fascial lines, you're even stronger because you're moving kinetic energy the way it's supposed to be through the lines, not through individual muscle groups. And then you're building torque correctly into the joints. So, you think about even fighters, eventually, like you were saying, imagine grappling with somebody that has trained their body and flexibility in a way where they can build tension into all the angles. That's a little bit different beast than, hey, I'm just flexible and I can definitely put you in some funky positions. But hey, I've trained my body to be in funky positions and really build major amounts of tension and balance the body. So, it's just a matter of getting the work done. We're looking at, the first step is, I don't have anybody to go through for this work. So I had to do it to myself first. And I completely rebuilt my body. So, like I said, I went from not being able to train at all, sitting at home. I mean, I can't tell you how depressed I was, Jake, because
I can,
this is
yeah,
what I love.
I
I always try to
can,
tell
yeah, I can actually relate though, because never, I was never bodybuilder, but again, I'm a martial artist.
getting
And
somewhere,
the first time I dislocated my knee, doctors tell you it's like, oh, you may never. Now, granted,
yeah,
he even said you're young, so you'll probably be okay, but there's a possibility. And like they flat out told me you might get arthritis before you're 18, and I was never diagnosed, but even to this day, I feel it. Now I've done a
mhm,
lot of work. I've done a lot of work on my knees, and they're better than they were even when I was in my 20s. But I, it hurt. It hurt a
yeah,
lot.
for sure.
But yeah, I
And
get
that's
that.
and I encourage you to continue to really push towards the book because it's just the very first piece. When I get the second one done, it's going to be a lot. I wanted to have it done sooner, but I really want to have one book that this just completes everything. So I'm trying to get everything in it because there's things that we've not talked about. So as far as like, say what I call pocket work, for example. So everybody's foam rolling. So one thing in studies with foam rolling, if you look it up, they're finding that foam rolling and stuff isn't really helping everybody. People are just mashing on things, and it's not really, some people are getting some benefit, but overall, you know, if you're cracking your back, you're getting the same cracks, and maybe you get deeper once in a while. But here's what's interesting. So what we're realizing is that the pockets control the pain, and I'll make this simple for you. So this is considered a pocket, like an armpit pocket, right? Where do you get the pain at though? Do you ever have pain in your armpit? No. You get pain on the top shoulder. Okay. So your elbow, we have a soft pocket here. Where do you get pain though? Pain's here. And you have smaller pockets within the hands. Your belly, is it a soft pocket? When I say soft, it's like you think about how your back, if you touch your lower back, it's kind of hard. But if you touch your belly, it's soft. So, do you get pain in your belly outside of food problems? No, not really. You don't
Yeah,
really think of pain like that, right? But where do you
yeah,
get the pain? Lower back.
yeah.
Same thing with the knee. You have pockets on the inside of your thighs where your thighs are softer. And some of them aren't really pockets, but I just have called them that. Where like you have the back of the knee pocket. Do you ever get pain in the back of your knee? Hardly ever. But where do you get pain? Top of the knee, side of the knee. So do you understand what I'm saying? So what we started doing is we started doing pocket work and found, so again, for my body, I did all this stuff for myself first because nobody's talking about this stuff. There are fascial specialists that are talking about armpit work and stuff and how to open up the body. But it's like whoever gets there first kind of thing to prove this work and do it. And so, again, I started doing pocket work. whether it be doing the tissue work, taking the ball and putting it in the armpit, or I prefer to do things that make more sense mechanically on how I'm designed, like hanging from trees, or like if I had, like I'll take 2 bars and put them on the squat rack, and then I'll hang in between them from my armpits. And then I'll move all those tendons and tissue out, and then my shoulder releases. Or I'll hang from the bicep, or I'll hang into the elbow and get this tissue out here, and I can just feel all this reorganize itself. And
Oh
even on the
wow,
back. So that's
that's a
what
mind bender.
yeah. So, but I try to make every, because I go live feed every day. So I talk about this stuff and I have clients and we're doing it and then I'm doing it to myself. And, I'm keeping up with Dr. Thomas Myers and Kelly Starrett, all the people that know this kind of stuff. And, I see where they're saying the same things, but they're not saying it the way that I'm saying it. And more importantly, they don't have the goals I have, because I managed gyms for 7 years and I want to help the general population. I'm not here to make $1 million, write a few books, and teach a small group of people. I want to figure out how we can make this standard for the average person so that it's easy, because we've already really messed people's brains up with chest and biceps and everything. So all we got to do is put these pictures up on the gym wall and start retraining people and saying this is what you're doing, and just think of your body as one whole unit. The only people that need to know the individual units are trainers like me, so that I can organize you as needed, or the massage therapist and stuff. But a good example I'll give you, where mechanics, if you train mechanics, you get aesthetics. So you can't see it in my shirt, but if you guys, go to my TikTok or whatever, I have a very big, full, round chest. Okay. Now with bodybuilders, you know what they do? They do incline bench, they do, regular bench, they do decline. What if I told you I don't do any specific work? All I do, and all I do is flat bench at this point, or push-ups, flat bench, dumbbells, but I just do flat. I never do the incline. And it's wild to think I have a ton of inside chest now, more than I had as a bodybuilder. I have a nice shelf of upper pec, but I don't do any incline work. But that's not the normal, right? The normal is, if I want a big upper chest, what do? You do incline dumbbells, incline flies. I don't do that. I lay on the flat bench, and like if I'm doing a fly, my arm is rotating, and I have different rotations that I do, but I do these flies both locked out, because again, when I lock my arm out, I even the tension between the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. So now I know this is one whole line, right? And I'm not thinking about a human. I'm thinking almost like a robot or of a bridge, right? So this is locked out, and then I'm just opening and closing this pec, but I'm not really, and I'm building tension into the elbow. And the more tension I can build in the elbow, I can build in the bicep, and then I can build in the pec. And then I
Yeah,
do
but
different range.
if anybody needs evidence, look at that tricep.
Yeah. So, and again, people ask me about traps and stuff. Like, I don't even train traps. I just open up my neck. But again, like when I'm benching, I told you I was doing these rotations, right? And you can see, look at this. See my arm? If I hold it here, see how when I rotate it, how it's really pushing and flexing all that upper part. But if I rotate my arm here, you see how it's moving downwards. So again, I've made it a lot easier. So now, instead of you going to the gym and you say, I want a big chest, and I'm doing all these different angles and how many sets I do, I don't know. We don't have to make it that difficult. Let's build in rotations, get lockouts going, take a step back, lose your ego for a second, because you're going to have to do lighter weight to get good at lockouts. And I'll tell you about lockouts. They're in the Arnold's Book of Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and that's interesting. So they used to do lockout work, and then for some reason, we just acted like we stopped, never did it again. And
That's
we just
funny.
kept our
Yeah, yeah,
elbow
that's
bent
funny.
all the time.
That's funny you mentioned that, because or at least the way I understood it was, yeah, they used to do lockouts, but that was quote when they didn't know what they were doing. It's way safer to not lock out, or that's the conventional wisdom.
That's what we were taught, is not to lock out, because you're going
Hmm.
to hyperextend. But again, that doesn't even make any sense if we have these gymnasts. I mean, they're hyperextending their elbows and putting themselves and their knees and putting themselves in wild positions. And then you have the strongest, I'd say weightlifters in the world, the power lifters, right? They're taking a bar above their head and locking it out and squatting it and stuff. Now, if it wasn't safe, would they do it? They wouldn't do it. And if it wasn't the strongest position, what would they do? They'd throw it above their head. They'd be like, "Argh!" But they don't, because that's too hard. So they lock out, and they even the kinetic energy throughout the bone and the line, which they don't really understand the line, But so we see evidence of it, and how the world has been with science and America, and we figured things out, and we're all just trying to figure this out together. And so it saved me, and it got me back to where I'm able to just train, be in the best shape of my life. I can go play with my kids, and we play Monster at the park. So we're playing Monster at the park where I'm chasing my kids. I don't chase other people's kids or touch them, because you know how that goes. And it was funny because this time I'm chasing my kids around, and the other kids wanted to play. So they became like the kids' blockers because they knew I wasn't going to touch them. So they're trying to block me from getting my kids. I kid you not, I'm 36 years old, and as many injuries as I've had, not only does my cardio not even hardly affected. Like I don't even do cardio, but I wasn't getting out of breath because I've created so much kinetic energy through all the things I'm doing that it's easy for me to move through life easily now. And then also I was jumping off the top of the playground. I mean, 10, 12 feet, landing like it was nothing. I mean, because I get hyper in myself anyways, like I told you, but I'm just chasing them around, being the monster, and I'm just jumping all over stuff. And it's nice to be 36 and feel like you're seven, feel more athletic than you did when you were a kid, and you're just running around. And I just wasn't scared. Like I remember just jumping off of things that were 10 feet high, easy 10 feet high on some stuff, 8 feet, which isn't super high, but when as you get older, it's like, should I do this?
Oh,
And
yeah, the first time I felt old was the first time I looked over something that was probably not even, probably more like 6 feet and being like, I mean, I
man,
did it,
I
but I
don't know
thought
that I
about
can
it.
do
I did it,
that.
but I thought about it. By the
Yeah.
way, Adelita GLV says, "Hi, Kyler, present," with the hand up.
Oh, nice to meet you. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, for sure, let us know. I know it's, again, until I get the books out, like at least we have the first flexibility book out that takes you through some stuff, and it'll take you through wall stretches. I try to make everything so that you don't need to buy things. I see a lot of my competitors, I would say, where they promote flexibility. And one, I'm charging you guys $8 for a book. They're charging you 99, 150, and you better make sure you can buy a band, have something to attach it to, that you're smart enough to figure out what they're saying, what to do with the band. Like it's just too much. I think that you need to master your body. So I try to give you as little stuff. And I think in this book, you just need something to hang from, would be the only thing you might have to figure out. But wall stretches, everybody has access to a wall. Everybody has a floor they can touch, or a yard. And the standing stretches, we're all standing here on earth. So those three for sure can change your life. Because on the standing stretches, for example, those are all locked out knees. And that's how you're going to save your knees, is getting good at those. So the more you can get those legs to lock out and stretch through them and do the rotations, Jake, that you see in there, because that book is only 16 total shapes, but it has 144 pictures. So I'm showing you how you can take 16 shapes. So say one pose, like a yoga pose or something, and do it 8 different ways, or 10 different. Each one has its variations. And
Yeah,
there's more.
which
There's way more than that book. That was just like, let's get a starter out so you guys could get a taste of it, I guess.
yeah, you made me feel a lot better about it because I asked you. I was reading the when I was reading the book, I'm like, when am I going to have time to do this? And then thankfully, you gave me the best advice, which is try them all, but then focus on the ones that are the most difficult for you.
Yeah. So every day on my live feeds, when people talk to me about what we're doing and stuff, we say, so here's the thing. This is where it's great, because I'm not here for the money, right? So let's say you're going to a yoga class. You got a yoga class you go to every day, and you know all the shapes you're going through, and you're trying to figure out how you can get more out of that class. Pay attention to your body. So let's say you go to yoga class, and let's say you guys did 100 moves that day, just hypothetically, right? 100 different positions. Pay attention to the ones that are the hardest, and then practice those shapes, master those shapes, because those shapes will open up other shapes you don't even know. Because everybody's got things they say, oh, I can never do that. I can never do the splits. But you start with shapes you can do. You build, you find the tensions that you struggle with and work on those. And before you know it, it all kind of starts coming together. Like I'm going to be able to do the splits here soon. And as tight as I've been my whole life, because I was always tight. Like my brother, I remember when I was younger, he could touch the palms on the floor, and he was overweight and not athletic. And I couldn't even hardly touch my knees. And then when I started this process, really getting into it and live feeding, I could touch about half my calf, like about halfway down my calf line. And now I can palm the ground in about a year,
I'm
you know?
I'm really happy to hear you say that because I'll be honest, like because again, my I do. I still do martial arts. My background was in Taekwondo, and I used to be pretty flexible. In fact, I used to be able to do I think they used to call it the American split, the one leg front, one leg back.
Yeah,
I used to be able
yeah.
to do that. And I'm at a point where, again, I mentioned at the beginning my extremely tight hamstrings. I cannot lock out my knees, and I can barely get to my like lower calf without extreme pain, and I certainly couldn't do. And the weirdest thing too is it's not just the pain; it is literally like a mechanical thing. I cannot touch the floor without at least a slight bend in my knees. Like my legs just will not do it.
Yeah, not yet.
So
Hmm.
I'm very, very encouraged. But I selfishly have another question for you because I train at
Sure.
the gym too, and I've already sort of amended my workouts, but I don't want to do it blind. So I have I have routines that I do, but I guess very selfishly, do you have like a weightlifting routine, or do you just have like certain things that you would recommend that I change? I.e., like if I'm doing isolateral rows, for example, instead of keeping everything bent, I lock out and then take it as far as I can possibly extend, or what would you recommend for that?
So this is where I need to get the second book done, right? So we can go through all these shapes. Okay. So part of it is I would say focus on the flexibility right now because that's going to open up all those things that you're doing. But the other thing would be, so like you're saying on a row, is you're pulling. One, use different textures. Because remember, like we said, your body is designed. We got to stop thinking of our body in this world, this reality, because this isn't our reality in the sense of what we were mechanically designed to do. I say that because, like, you're mechanically designed. The reason why they built the squatty potty and why when you go to other countries they have a hole in the ground, even in a nice hotel, it's because you're designed to, as I say, take a poo in the woods, right? You are designed to squat and then take a poo. And if you go to the Squatty Potty website, they'll show you mechanically why that's important. So, what are we doing? Well, we sit in a 90-degree fashion and we do it mechanically incorrect. And every time you do that, it's like sin. It's a bad thing for your body and it builds over time. So, one, I need to get the book done so we can go through all these shapes, but I want you to think of your body mechanically. So, remember how you're talking about punching, right? So, your body is designed to do things like what? Climb, right? So, you're designed to climb, okay? But you can't really climb. Maybe you don't have access to that stuff, but you're designed to climb. You're designed to sprint. You're designed to poo in the woods. You're designed to swim, okay? You're designed to do eccentric, concentric, and isometric exercise, meaning you're designed to lock out and hold a joint. Concentric, pulling it to me, eccentric, it's on the way down. You're designed to have all these functions, right? And so we want to maximize those. So one way you could think of it with your training that I could give you a tip on, and everybody watching or who does watch this to immediately start making a huge effect in your mechanical structures, understanding how it's actually designed. So the biceps and the glute hamstring structure are designed to hold. Think about your arms. What do you do with the biceps most of the time? Are you not carrying things around, holding them? Okay. So, like I said, when I carried this chair in here, so I carried it like 50 yards in here. So I had my biceps carried here. I've moved about 50 times in my life since I moved around the country and just moved a lot. My biceps didn't burn up because I've been training them to hold. So here's what I would say is your biceps are mainly designed to hold. Think about your climbing, right? And so let's say I'm climbing because I used to rock climb a lot. So I'm in this position and I'm looking for the next branch. So see how my biceps, it's holding me in this position. And then my head is designed to be able to move when I'm doing exercise. What did we used to teach? Keep your head straight all the time, right? So it wants to be able, because you never know in real life, you pick up a box and your head's got to move to the side and now you got to walk. But what do? We always keep it stiff. So we need that neck to move. But more importantly, to finish what I'm trying to help you guys understand is the bicep. And just like when you're sitting and squatting in the woods, right? So if I went to go to the bathroom, I'm going to squat and I'm going to hold that position or I'm holding things. So the bicep, I don't really have a number on it. It's like 80-20, but your bicep, it's like 80% designed to hold things and carry things. And then 20% is to be able to kind of, like if I was climbing faster, but you get
Yeah,
tired and you're holding it. Okay.
yeah,
And I'm looking for the next grab. grab, hold. And then the tricep, as you know, what's it designed? To punch, it's designed to fling, designed to throw, which is interesting because it's the same as your quads. Your quads are designed to spring you off the ground when you jump. So part of what would help you to start reorganizing your fascia is like when you're doing your pulls. So now you understand you need to get full range of motion. You need to let that, like if I'm doing a row, let's see if I can go to the side here. So if I'm doing a row, so I want my arm to lock out. See how my elbow looks like that now because it's used to hyperextending. So I want to be able to lock out, because even when I'm locking out, so let's say you're holding on to something with your row. If I'm locked out, what is it doing with this joint? It's pulling it away, right? So it's giving it the ability to pull away. Or if I was in a plank position, I was on my arm, I'd be compressing the joint together. So balance teaches us that I need to be able to compress the joint together, but also allow it to be pulled away. Those are two functions you could think. So you want to do full range of motion, but when you're doing your reps, think, okay, if I'm using biceps and back here, my biceps and back are designed to hold. So maybe you do 10 reps and then you hold the last one and you hold it.
Yeah.
And then you
So,
focus on breathing through your nose,
mhm.
because then we can open up that rib cage and reorganize it. And maybe the first set, you just hold it for 10 breaths. Now you say, well, how long should I hold it? Just long enough that you start feeling like everything. Because you'll notice this, Jake, as you get good at it. Let's say you pull back and you start to hold. All of a sudden, you'll notice your shoulders will drop back and down, because as your body starts to hold it, it goes, well, if I'm going to be the strongest at this, I need this shoulder to go back and down.
Mm.
But you didn't give me that chance because you never stayed in it. You
And
just,
that's,
hey,
yeah, and that's
hey,
particularly tricky with rows because the mechanical temptation always is there to raise, hunch because you,
yeah.
yeah.
And
So
we
I
and
get,
we've always done things as reps, Jake. That's the problem too. Is triceps a rep, because again, the triceps designed to fire. So since it's designed to fire, it wants to do less holds, because this thing is firing. Or if you're punching, okay, or so it's designed to fire. So like when I do a tricep, say a dumbbell, I'm coming down slowly. I'm loading the gun, fire, loading the gun,
okay,
fire. Same thing when I'm squatting. I squat slowly. I'm loading my glutes. I'm loading my hamstrings. And then I fire up, because what does my quads want to do? They want to fire me and jump. So
okay,
these are the
okay.
mechanics that will be in the book, but I can encourage you now, do the
Oh, okay,
flexibility book.
okay.
You know what I mean? And then also think biceps and, again, butts and glute. Like when I do squats, we might do some holds at the bottom, right? So let's say I put 200 pounds on my back. I squat all the way down. Now I don't relax in the squat at the bottom. The bar's not on me. I'm like, but it's a correct as low as you physically can get. And then I just hold that load very low. And then I breathe through my nose. And then the next week I might do where I go down and I do like pulses in the recoil. So I'll kind of move up and down, and then maybe I'll do 5 firing reps, so I'm slow down, fire up, slow down, fire up. Might do 10 reps. I might do 20. How many reps you want to do is dependent on, I mean, again, maybe what you enjoy doing and what you feel like you're getting. Fascially speaking, I don't know your fiber type. So this is where people got to play with it and say, well, I want to get big muscles. So let me try 5 reps for a while. Let me try 10. Let me try the 20s. Let me see what my body likes and what grows, you
Okay, so
know.
now, yeah, now I'm literally going through this all in my head. I'm like, okay, I know what exercises I do. Is this is this a push or a spring motion, or is this a hold motion? So just kind of a clarification question, just so that I make sure that I understand. If I'm doing a bicep curl, for example, your recommendation would be to, instead of focusing so much on just doing X number of reps, is to, when I've got it lifted up to about here and my bicep is engaged, I should hold it more
Yeah, and you
instead of
should do
just
it in all
focusing on.
sorts of things. You should do it on a preacher curl and hold it, because that's one angle, right?
Yeah.
You could take a rope, like I like to do, because I like to incorporate the whole body, right? So I'll take a rope on the high angle, I'll pull it to me, and I'll get in a squat position. So now I'm holding a squat, getting my hips nice and healthy, and I'm holding it, and I'll hold it for 10 breaths. And then I start to get tired. So then I'll do 10 reps. Some days I just do a hold. I mean, it's most 99.9% of people aren't trying to be high end athletes, right? And so what I'm trying to encourage people to do is I'm trying to give them the opportunity to take care of themselves and not be dependent on trainers anymore. Trainers need to be in a place where we help you and then you move on, you understand what we're trying to get you to do. And you got to figure out how much, hold to not hold to reps you need to do. So if you've been doing reps and your arms aren't growing, or your shoulders aren't feeling better, your neck's not feeling better, when you start holding things, your fascia responds to it differently than when you're doing a rep. Okay, because it's isometrics when you hold it, and it really starts to restructure. And we also know with fascia that when you do eccentric exercises, so let's say I pull the rope towards me for the curl, so I pull it fast or whatever, but when I fight it on the way back, it really releases and reconfigures that muscle. So, and again, if for the last 50 years they were teaching you to lock out everything, I'd be teaching you to bend things. I'm trying to help people understand balance. Okay, so you need to train your legs. Your legs shouldn't be giant compared to your upper body. Your arms shouldn't be giant compared to your chest. Everything needs to be as balanced as possible. I would say that your biceps are more designed to hold things. And again, I have these experiences, and my clients do. And I mostly work with people that are senior citizens who are in pain and they want their bodies back, and they appreciate this more than a younger person does. But like I said, every time I'm holding stuff and carrying stuff in, like even at the store today, I was carrying my jug, and this thing's pretty heavy at a gallon, like it starts to weigh on you. But I've done so much holding now that my fingers just kind of clap and I just forget it's there. Whereas before, it's like I'm switching hands every 30 seconds. If I'm carrying groceries in, I gotta, you feel that burn. I'm to the point now where I don't really feel, my body just moves. Not that I'm impenetrable or I'm some Superman, but think of it this way. If I'm going to the gym and I'm doing a preacher curl with a 50-pound dumbbell and I hold it here, and then I pick up a chair that weighs 10 pounds and I'm holding it, like the 10 pounds is nothing now. And since I've trained my bicep to hold and do things that I would do in real life, because like I keep telling everybody in the live feeds, stop, or even in person, like stop going to the gym and using it as a place to just, oh, I want to look good in the gym, or I want to feel better in the gym. I need you to feel better outside the gym so you'll keep going to the gym, because whether you're young or not, like at some point, you're going to wish you'd taken care of your body. And you're going to wish that, like my client I was telling you at the beginning, Paula, she was able to work out. It was like a month into our training and body work that, she said she worked outside for 3 hours, 68-year-old person who's fit, but still she was having pain like everybody. You go in to pick up sticks in your yard, it's painful, gets old bending over, and she had no pain, couldn't believe it.
That's
I had another client, Oscar, who's technically, I guess, my business partner at this point. He was going to get hip surgery the day before we met because his doctor said you need hip surgery. He went back after 3 weeks with me, and his doctor said, I don't know what you're doing, but you don't need hip surgery.
I don't know what
So
you're doing, but
that's,
keep doing it.
yeah, so that's valuable to me as a trainer to take to give people their lives back, because Oscar wasn't even training legs. He wasn't comfortable with it. His legs, his feet, he stood like this, real close together, and now he's standing kind of like this, and he still can't get all the way down. He's still struggling, but he's out of pain day to day. He doesn't have to have hip surgery. His bones aren't on top of each other. Because I told him, I said, I'm going to train your fascia, and your fascia is controlling whether your bones touch. And it's trying to keep them from touching. So you're going to start training your fascia, and it's going to reorganize your bone structure and release your knots. And then hopefully your bones don't want to smash together anymore. And they didn't. And it only
Oh,
took a few weeks.
hopefully. One more selfish question, and then
Okay.
kind of wonder if we want to give them a little preview. Because first of all, buy the book. Like it's
Yeah.
100% worth it. Um, and then we'll get into your socials here at the end. But so any tips for pull-ups? Because my pull-up game is pathetic.
Well, I learned a lot from Dr. Charles Poliquin, who passed away a few years ago. You guys can look up Charles Poliquin. He's considered one of the world's greatest, or the greatest strength coach, in the sense that he had like 22 Olympic athletes that won medals. I remember one of the stories. If you watch his stuff, he's very high end, and he was getting to where he was starting to understand this. So, like with pull ups, one thing he talks about is when you're pulling up, instead of pulling from the back, you're kind of pulling from the back of the elbow. But again, to expand on that, let's create torque. So we talked about bench, how you're pressing, and like if you got a bar, so when I press up with the bar, I'm kind of breaking the bar this way to press up. And then when I come down, I'm kind of breaking it this way. And they teach this in powerlifting, actually. So if you look up powerlifting, when that bar is coming down, they teach to try to break the bar as you come down. And that gives you the most potential. And then you're breaking it away. Okay. So with pull ups, what you're going to start working on is one, do your flexibility work, obviously. Use a dip machine if you have to help you.
Yep.
But now we're pulling from the top. So maybe I need to pull from the side here. So remember how I was trying to break that bar with the bench? Do the same thing. This is where it carries over and it gets easy because you start realizing we're saying the same thing and you're just applying it to different movements. So when you're pulling up, so imagine I'm pulling upwards, right? So I'm going to have my hand here. And if I'm on a bar, I'm going to, again, I can't bend the bar, right? But I can turn my hand and generate torque. Okay. So once you grab a bar, here's what's going to happen. See my thumb? You grab that bar. See how my thumb presses into the bar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's going to activate. And then the whole hand's going to get active and it's going to create torque through the whole line. So when you're doing your pull up, do just like you did with the bench. But when you pull up, try to rotate through your thumbs. And as you get better at it, all of a sudden you won't be doing just like, trying to get up and down. What you'll do is you'll start to turn and your body will automatically start to move a little bit. And then it'll just be up to you to finish it.
Mm.
It's a weird experience as you get good at it. That's why I got to get this second book done. It's just I've added a lot to it, and I'm glad that I took my time with it because I added a lot to it, and I think I got everything that people will need to know about fascial mechanics and how to do this stuff with flex. Because so the second book will include flexibility, but it'll include all these mechanics with not just the body weight exercises, like how do I do push-ups and stuff, but how do I do, like you were saying, a row, a bench, dumbbells, how can we balance all these things? But you once you start generating torque, it's like the push-up. What'll happen is you'll notice that when you start to rotate in, your body will automatically start to fall to the ground. What?
Almost
And
like
then
it's mechanical.
and then you'll rotate out, and it's like it's pushing away without you even now it won't do it all the way, but it'll start to do it, and you'll go, oh, so I just have to finish this. Same thing with the squat, rotating your knees out and in, generating torque into the fascial lines or the IT band. So when you're squatting, you're grabbing your feet to the ground as best you can, but you're rotating into the outside of the knee to that IT band. Because this is why we're saying we want to get people thinking about the lines so that you think about like the line that goes down your leg, your IT band. And then when you squat, you're like, okay, I'm trying to activate that line and feel that whole thing. And then as you do that, you'll notice as you come down, it feels like it's screwdrivering you down to the ground. And then when you squat up and you rotate in and you move the kinetic energy from the outside line to the inside line, you'll feel it push you away from the ground. So you get good at this stuff and you're basically optimizing the leverage of the joints through the fascial lining system. So this is why once we get this all out, like as much as these guys are squatting now and stuff, I bet people are going to get much stronger. Watching UFC fights is going to get wicked eventually because these guys do this sort of stuff and they really understand how to really optimize their kinetic energy beyond what they're doing. It's going to change how all this works.
Okay, so yeah, yeah. I have
Yeah,
one more. I have another question for you because that
for
just made me
sure.
think. That just made me think. So I recently, like within the last couple of days, I tweaked my deadlift because actually I'm not going to go into the story, but basically my nephew's really into lifting and he's trying to well, he's not trying, he's succeeding in competing with me. I'm still a little bit stronger than him, but
Right.
it's not going to be long. But he's an athlete. I'm an old man. He
Right.
wrestles and plays football, so like he's only 15. So he's going to eclipse me very very quickly. But little friendly competition, he just told me like, yeah, I just did my PR for deadlift and I just happened to be at the gym. So I said, well, I can't let him win. So, and I don't train one rep max. So I honestly I don't know what my one rep max is for deadlift, but I just went a little bit more than him and I did it, but he made a comment, cut me up. He was like, yeah, but he's like, yeah, but that was like all in your lower back. And I'm like, it wasn't all in my lower back, but I will say I probably wouldn't have done any more than that without a weight belt because I did feel it. It wasn't all there. but that got me thinking. So the last, literally only a few days ago, I was doing my deadlifts lower weight, but I was like, okay, now I'm going to really focus on the negative rep, moving my hip out instead of just bending at the back, and then coming up, bringing the hip in. And I felt a world of difference. But is that correct, or am I
Well,
thinking about that wrong?
here's the thing. This is where my answers are very different. Okay. And I know this. So we now know that your head and spine are the sperm that you once were. Okay. Now, a sperm is a snake in a sense, and it's creating angles. And I say this because imagine this is who you were as you started, and then you built this body in an egg. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting, because I had to change on this because I've taught mechanics my whole career, and I had to change what I was taught and what we teach. Like I was telling you before, we kept the head in the same spot. But it turns out this thing needs to be able to build tension because it's a snake, right? It builds tension and everything, right? So, one thing with the deadlift is I agree that doing cat back deadlifts, horrible, right? But there is a place for them because you should be able to build tension in a curved back. Who does it? Well, do not the world's strongest men squat and then curve their back and pick up a giant stone and place it on something? Nobody seems to have a problem with that curved back. Huh. So that's interesting. So the deal is you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to, what you can do is if you have a bar, so you take a bar, not a heavy bar, like the bar I've got over there, PVC pipe, right? And so, when you do like a plank or again in a deadlift, that bar should touch your middle back. Then there should be a small spot in your lower back and then a small spot in your neck. And then everything should be aligned. So you should be able to deadlift with your back hooked. Like I say, like you're at the club, you're sticking your butt out, but you don't want to have it overly hooked either. Right. So you should be able to do it straight backed. Right. But there's also a place for as you get tired and lifting heavy weight that you can still curl the back, but it's only okay if you have the flexibility for it. So if you were to see me deadlift, I do deadlifts very perfectly healthy. But as I get in heavier weight, my back starts to curve, but it doesn't feel like it used to. It doesn't feel scary. It's just building tension in different angles. As I say, you got to be able to build tension into all angles or angular tension or whatever. And so they both have a place. Like, for example, when you're in that deadlift position, right? So your back's kind of here, right? And when you do like reverse delt flies,
Hmm.
it's weird when you have your back straight like that, your back's flexed, right? So I do the fly and I feel it in my delt. When I lock my knees out and let my back curve and I do them, my rear delts are on fire. They love it. Hits them way harder. Why? Because I'm not activating my lower back and all this other kinetic energy. I'm really isolating. So one tip I'll give you is, and this is what nobody does, but eventually everybody will do. So how in deadlifters that are tearing their biceps, have you noticed that they hold it like this and they always tear that bicep? Why? Because they've turned this hand over and decided that this is optimal. And so this thing is weak because it shouldn't be. So see how my shoulders turned in? So if I want to pick a bar up and backwards, technically, in a sense, right? Because I don't want it to pull me forward, right? But when my arm is rotated forward, everything's moving forward. If I open it up, it's moving back. So the reason why these guys are tearing this bicep or this bicep, it's because this hand's turned. So when I deadlift with both hands supinated. And you start doing that, and you'll notice because let me move my chair back here. Oh. So you'll notice. So again, see my structure with my arm, my palms forward, see how my structure wants to be back. But then as I rotate my arms forward, see how everything's moving forward. It's going to make me want to go this way, technically. Right? So this is why they're all tearing their bicep, because they're turning one in, and then it gets too heavy, right, on the deadlift. And this kinetic energy can't transfer correctly because we have an imbalance in hand grip. So the bicep tears. So what I would suggest is one, turn your hands under, because when you do that, you'll find that it actually mechanically makes you want to do the deadlift more correctly with the way you're trying to do it. Okay. Because you won't be falling forward or have one arm falling forward and one arm not. Because now as you start looking at these lines, shouldn't I use the same lines to do the simple movement instead of opposing lines? where one line's trying to send me one way and one line's sending me another. Because you want to stand straight up. You don't want to stand curving. I'm not driving here. Okay. And then also push your feet through the ground.
Yeah.
That will help you immensely. Is get in that bar and then drop your hips as low as you can. Because I'm telling you, once you do this with your hands and widen them if you have to, figure out how wide you have to go, but pull on that bar with them and pull those hips down and it'll generate it. Because again, what's interesting about the fascia lines is think of it this way: the brain and the fascia lines know already without man discovering it. It's like math, right? Did man discover math or did math already exist?
Oh,
Right.
now
So
you're
math,
getting philosophical.
but math already existed, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We just decided there's already something there, right? It's the same thing with the fascia lines. The brain already knows how these fascia lines should move, and how brain and the body already know how to optimize kinetic energy and torque and leverage of the joints. But we've decided all these other weird things, and now we have pain higher than ever. Nobody can get their obesity down. We have athletes getting injured way more than they used to. So you mean to tell me all these athletes, like we used to say it's the sitting argument, but I would say it's the trainer argument too. We have all these basketball players and football players getting hurt more than ever because the training they're doing isn't maximizing the mechanics of their body. It's just doing different versions of science that we've decided that has nothing to do with the fascia mechanics, most of it, because we're compartmentalizing it so much. And when you have a compartmentalized body and you're thinking compartmentalized, then everything starts breaking down because it's individually moving. I need you to move as one whole giant brain cohesive unit. So with your deadlift, I do both supinated palms. You could do both here. You could do here. But as you get heavier, you see where these guys are tearing that bicep. But I do both palms supinated because when I supinate my palms, see what it does? How it rotates
yeah. It
everything.
automatically, well, it
And more
automatically
feet.
pull, yeah, it
Right.
automatically pulls your shoulders down and it straightens out your back just by
Doing
just
that. Right.
mechanically doing that motion. Yeah, I totally
I'm
understand
interested to
that.
see you go and try this and then
Oh,
text me.
I'm going to. I'm not supposed to do deadlifts tomorrow, but I think I'm going to just to try this out.
Yeah, try it out and then push through. And then, so what I would do is do palms open, right? Go as wide as you need to. So I'm here. So I'm here holding it. Well, let's say I'm about to hold it, right? So you bend over, you're going to grab the bar, but then kind of pull yourself, your hips down into it. And you'll find that with your palms there, it'll kind of automatically, like I'm grabbing the bar, and then I just kind of like I kind of pull, like you're not pulling off the ground, but you kind of give it tension. And
Yeah.
then as you give it tension, and then move your feet around. Don't get stuck like we've always said. Well, your feet need to be this distance. Your mechanics might be different right now. You might need your feet. So like I say, you need to be able to squat with your feet all the way together. And then you need to be able to squat with your feet in every angle until you do a split. That's your mechanical design. We don't teach that. We teach wide squat, skinny squat. Nobody's talking about splits. Nobody's talking about being able to squat. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to help you envision the body mathematically. You're just a shape, making shapes. You don't like the shape you are, so we need to have you do different shapes. We need to have you get in different shapes. And when I say you don't like the shape you are, that's obesity and stuff, right? Or how you look. But we can also say that your shape is in pain. So the shapes you're making are hurting your shape. So we got to get you doing these different shapes, and shapes are made of what? Angles, simple stuff. So when you're doing your deadlift, know that you can do any foot grip, figure it out so that you can do it healthfully. And then over time, as you get more flexibility, you can start doing all the different grips. And then, it's like now we don't have to argue whether sumo deadlift is better than regular deadlift. Technically, you should be able to deadlift with your hands all the way out and feet together, and then every angle in between, doing variations of it. So I could lift the bar with my hands together, say, and my feet wide. That's appropriate because that's an angle, right? That's a good angle that I should learn how to do, because there might come a time in life where I'm walking and playing with my kids or something and I slip on something and I want my legs to be able to open up real wide and to
Yeah.
catch me. There might
Well,
be a
not,
time
yeah.
where I'm walking on a curb and I'm jerking around and I need my legs to go close. So it's like with lunges, right? With lunges, you should be able to do lunges with your feet right in front of each other, but both close together. So you should be able to do a lunge with your feet on top of each other and then all the way out in every angle in between. And then you should also be able to do a lunge where you step in different angles and to the point you do a side lunge. So all we've done is in the past, as we've said, there's a front lunge, there's a back lunge, there's a side lunge, but really all these angles are appropriate. Same thing with the squat. We've said there's a skinny squat or a close grip. There's close grip, there's medium grip, and there's wide grip. There's every angle. What are you talking about? And the more I can get to where I can do all these angles, it makes all the other angles healthier and it makes me healthy outside the gym. So palms up, hold that. When you do that, give it a little tension, let that butt drop real hard. You'll probably have to go pretty wide at first. Find a
Right.
good foot position and then push that thing to the ground and stand up. And I'm telling you, as you get good at your palms being forward, you're going to go, ooh, this is weird.
Yeah,
So
probably. I like weird. I like weird in the gym.
yeah,
Um,
this is easier. It's going to
yeah,
feel weird. But it's going to be like, oh, it's like my body just wanted me to stand up. I wasn't fighting kinetic energy anymore.
yep, yep. So that being said, I'm sure anyone who's watching this is wondering now, okay, you keep talking about these shapes and these positions. Do you have like maybe a sample of one or a few of the positions that you can show people so that they can kind of understand? Like definitely, like I said, buy the book, but do you have like a photo of some of those positions or
Trying to think here. This is where I need to get better at my work. I could probably just show you.
I was gonna say or show us, yeah.
Let me see here. If I can show you like I don't know if you guys can see my feet here. So let me show you the squat so you can kind of understand what we're talking about here. So see how my feet are together. Now, remember how we talked about this being an IT band line, right? So
Yep.
with all squatting, you need to be able to do two things. You need to be able to rotate out. So I'm rotating out into the IT band and squatting, right? But you also see dancers, they're a good example. Do they not squat like this a little bit? So should you do a bunch of heavy weight like that? Mechanically, no. But again, your body's designed to do these things, and this is what you're trying to understand. So with your squat, like you should be able to start with your feet together and see how I'm creating torque. See, I've gotten good at it. See how much my knees move. So here's my knees straight, but see how much I can move them out. And then I can squat with my feet together. Okay, so that has a value to it just as much as being able to squat wide. You see what I'm saying? All these angles are appropriate. Does that make sense? And it's the same thing. So I mean, I'll be able to get down there with doing the push-up. Is you should be able to do a push-up with your hands here just as much as you can do a push-up in all these angles. And the more that you build into these angles, the more you'll notice in day-to-day life it'll carry over. Because in day-to-day life, you're moving in weird angles and doing stuff in different, you're not doing the same patterns, every time you doing whatever you're doing with groceries, kids,
Right.
you know, that sort of thing. Things like you said earlier, and I meant to talk about it, is most of the time when people get hurt, it's because they do something weird. I slipped and fell. It's never, I was doing exactly what I normally do and I started hurting. It's very rarely that. It's, I lost balance. I had to pick something up funky. So I went into an angle that I'm not used to and I had no strength there. Well, duh, because you haven't trained all those angles. And the thing is with the book, I made it easy for you. You don't even have to train every angle because the body's good like that. If you just train close, like I say, usually pick 3 angles. So you have you could go here, here, and here. Like you really, but you want to start playing in angles, and we want to get away from. I always squat in the same position. This is my strongest position. Well, that position will be stronger if you practice the other angles. You don't have to get as strong, but you know what I mean? Because the wider you squat, for example, the more it opens up your outer hip. The closer your feet are together, the more it's going to be closer, like inside the hip and spinal. That's a way of thinking of it. That's why guys will do push-ups with their hands together, right? For their inner chest. The closer the hands are, the closer it is to the chest. The more I move my hand out, the more it starts to cover towards the shoulder. If that makes sense. Was that
It,
helpful?
yep, absolutely helpful. Um, but yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm gonna say it again. Like I could not believe how I didn't realize how I was until I did, because today I did the wall positions where you're on your back with your legs on the wall and then doing those various positions. Like I did the first one, was like, holy, did not realize how tight I was. Like to the point where when I first did it, I'll be honest, like my butt wasn't even on the ground.
Oh, for sure. For
Like
sure.
I
And your legs may
literally,
not have been straight.
probably not. Now that might have been slightly an issue of the fact, like I couldn't believe it seems so simple, just put your legs on the wall, but actually getting into that position required like thought and adjustment and like I could do it, but it wasn't as simple as it should have been.
Right.
Like it was a complete mind bender.
And I'll tell you this, the wall stretches, before I knew about fascia lines, when I started doing the wall stretches, I could only front squat 95 pounds at the time because of my pain. After 6 weeks of the wall stretches, I was doing 225.
Wow,
That's
that sounds good for me because I'll be honest, my squat, it's a little bit of paranoia, but it's a lot of, well, I mean, it's a lot of paranoia, but some of
yeah.
it's justified because I don't squat super heavy. I'm conscious of my knees. I've got two surgically repaired knees. I've been through that. I don't want to go through that again. But part of the reason why I switched gyms is because if you go to like Planet Fitness, most everyone I've been to, I'm sure there's some that have free squat racks, but most of them are
They
Smith
don't.
machines.
They
And
don't.
okay, yeah. So, but what I found was it wasn't causing pain, but it was putting some pressure on my knees because I didn't have as much freedom to move with the
Oh,
bar.
for sure. Yeah.
And I know some people prefer that, but so this is wild. This is what and I'm sure, like,
Yeah.
obviously, you know this because you have a background in gyms. But what I also noticed was when I started benching on a free bench and not a Smith machine, I
Hmm.
had to lower my weight drastically
Oh,
because
for sure.
I had the force to push it up, but I didn't have the other stabilizer muscles to keep the bar steady.
Well, here's another way to look at it too. This is great stuff, right? So is it that you don't have the stabilizer muscles, or when you're moving on the Smith machine, it's one angle, right?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So when you're doing a free bench, what is it? It's moving its angles because you have to keep it in the same angle. It's a different. So you're right. Yes, it's stabilizer muscles, but see how we're talking about angles? If I'm doing something on a machine, it's just the same angle over and over again. So of course I can generate more power because my body doesn't have to think as much and it can just build into one angle. But now I have a free bar. Okay, so now I have to stabilize whether it's going to go and as it moves, where it's going. So these are more angles, and angles are small, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you think from here to here, we have 90. So it doesn't take much of a, okay, 90, 89. But when you're on that Smith machine, you're at 90, 90, 90, 90, 90. But when you're on that with that bar free or dumbbells, you got to manage that. So you're getting 5 to 10 degrees. This is why I'm saying is imagine if there was a line coming out of this dumbbell, right? And I rotate it and I can rotate it this far. So technically I take this line going this way. And when I come down, I take it all the way. I take it. So that's 180 degrees angle. Ooh, buddy. So
Yeah,
now when
I
I go to
noticed.
regular life and I'm playing with my kids and we're doing stuff, I have angles. I've strength in all these angles, not the same. And I'll tell you this with your Planet Fitness and stuff. Remember this: the machines and stuff you should not finish your mechanical workouts with machines and stuff like that. Okay, those are designed for people that have injuries and older people. But we got away from that. Who did that? Bodybuilders, because they're trying to teach you aesthetics and they're blowing their joints up and everything. But use the machines to warm up, right? Because you're tired or you're more tight, you're cold, right? So you want one angle, right? So let's say you go in there and you do the chest machine first to warm up, the pec fly machine that's more controlled to warm up. And then we're going to move to more free will stuff. And if you can, always finish with a body weight exercise for that muscle group. So for chest, you'd finish with push ups and dips. You know, for legs, you would definitely want to finish with squats, especially with the dumbbell in front of you, because that's where you carry things and you squat and pick stuff up, or lunges, because lunges are you mechanically getting off the ground. Everyone needs to be able to do a lunge because if you can't do a lunge as you get older, you can't get off the ground. And then you got to press the button and then the ambulance has to come and you've fallen and you can't get up. And you don't
Oh
want to be that
wow,
person.
I'm gonna have to completely restructure my entire routine.
But it's
because I'm
again,
doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. I'm flat out
but
doing it
it's not your
wrong.
fault, right?
Right,
And
right,
this
and
is
that's
the
why.
way we all did it, you
Yeah,
know.
that's why I was totally stoked for this conversation because I knew it was going to be illuminating.
And like with back, finish with pull ups, or which is really hard to do. If you lay on your back and you fold your hands back and then you press your back up into like a sunset,
Yeah, I used to be able to do
that,
that.
that's a whole backline exercise. So I like to finish with that one for my back because I can do it. Before I could do that, what would I do? I'd make sure I'm finished with pull ups, you know, or finish with like something. Just it doesn't have to be just a body weight exercise, but just don't be finishing with machines. Finish with something that requires that is closest to what you are mechanically designed to do. You are mechanically designed to be able to push the body off the ground. You're mechanically designed to do a free weight squat, to poo in the woods, to do a lunge, to pull up on something and climb. So think of those things as let me finish with that. Because
Yeah,
what I'm saying is you want to leave the gym the most mechanically integrated because your fascia, it's going to leave the gym with whatever you did last. And it's really good on this. So if you left the gym and you did a bench press on a machine that really allowed you to do a bunch of power, but into a certain specific movement, it's going to remember that pattern last. Now it's built in all the other angles if you did all that stuff, but you kind of leave with whatever you finished with. So
yeah. I don't want to do this on air because it probably will take some time. But I wonder if you would be so kind if I were to send you because I do three rotating different workouts at the gym. I do other stuff, but as far as the gym lifting goes, I do three
yeah,
rotating plans. Could I send you those and basically just ask your advice on how to tweak those?
yeah,
Because
let's reorganize them and change the reps and give you some different ideas.
yeah, yeah, because
Because I
I can
want to
tell
see how
you,
fast, since we're having this conversation and you're doing the book, we want to see how fast so you can understand. Because as we get moving, get the second book done. But my business partner and I, we're starting to look at space so we can get a gym so that we can do this on a larger scale and get the money so that we can go to colleges and we can put all the stickies on people, do the movements and show the kinetic, and really,
yeah,
really prove this work
man, if
beyond
and
just the
when
fact
if
that,
when you guys get a gym, let me know. I would love to come down and do a workout.
for sure, man.
Like
Yeah. And
I'll
we're
take
going
a
to
I'll take a
drive.
weekend and travel down. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And we're
But
going to
yeah,
put the fascial lines, like we're going to have the pictures of the fascial lines in the gym, so we can teach it. And we got our trainers. What we want is have massage therapists, chiropractors, and trainers all because the younger chiropractors and depending massage therapists, they understand fascia. They're being taught it. It's just again, like I said, I mean, you think about when they started doing all this stuff in the books, you've got a solid, gosh, 40, 50, 60 years before they decide fascia is even a deal. And even when they did, it still took time of studying it, you know, and I would just say within the last 10 years, it's become a kind of a hit word. So for example, you have the fascia blaster with Ashley, whatever her name is, but
mhm,
that's not what we're talking about. And, that's just to get cellulite out. And it does work a little bit, and there's other techniques you should use. But again, that's not what we're trying to say here. Or if you know Hani Rambod, that's the number one bodybuilding coach right now that has the most gold medals and most guys. He teaches FST training, which is fascial stabilization training or fascia something. It's fascia training basically. But again, he's not doing it to save the general population like we're trying to. We want to get obesity down. We want to get pain down. We think that pain, if we can get pain under control, I think we can start moving the numbers on obesity. But he's not trying to do that. What is he trying to do? He's making guys big bodybuilders. Whoop de doo. I don't care about that. I don't have time for it. Okay. And not to say I wouldn't train a bodybuilder. It's fun. But long term, we got to open up gyms. We got to get hundreds of gyms out there that are really trying to build classes, build trainers, build massage therapists, build chiropractic work, because you need to be cracked. But, a lot of times people aren't, and, you've probably know most people aren't happy with chiropractors. I just know that. But it's because they're not looking at how to crack people from a fascial perspective. The older ones are. Now, the younger ones are starting to understand because I know some of them and they do a lot better work because they understand what they're trying to interconnect. If this is tight, this is tight. They're looking at the body differently, and it matters how you look at the body. That matters how you talk to the body. It's like those silly things in Asia where they put the rice in a bowl, with the water, and they say, I love you to it, and it doesn't grow mold. And they say, I hate you to the bowl, and it grows mold, and they do the water thing. Like how you think and how you visualize the body has a major effect on it and on the world around you. So,
Yeah. And for anyone who may be listening to this and are starting to think that this sounds like a little too out there, just remember, because again, history nerd here, prior to the discovery of penicillin and really germ theory in general, infections were treated completely differently, and it was a real toss up whether or not you would win. But then all of a sudden, somebody accidentally discovers a fungus that
yep.
pretty much kills all bacteria. And you got to think, and this is documented, even the people that discovered it thought it was a mistake, so they did it again and they did it again. But then they realized it worked, and it completely changed medicine. You know, same way too. The practice of treating a wound during the Civil War
Or
was
washing your
usually
hands,
washing your
like they thought
hands.
that
Yep.
was crazy up until the late 1800s, and they were firing the doctors that wanted to clean their hands. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, I was even going to go into a Civil War wound thing, but that a better example is using cleaning water.
Hmm.
They took a chemical that was toxic because chlorine is toxic at certain levels, but somebody figured out that at this kind of Goldilocks zone, it does a really good job of killing all the bad stuff in the water with having little to no adverse effect. Now, I know there's a lot of debate on
Yeah.
chlorine, but I think we can all agree that chlorine is better than cholera.
Yeah. And your point is what, that things change. We don't know everything. And especially my industry, this isn't social sciences where we know why people do what we do, and we're not going to change our thoughts on that for the most part. That feel, this is a field where the human body, they are continuing to figure stuff out. And that's, I like what you're saying, because that's the last 200 years have been crazy, and we're still going and figuring stuff out and trying to do this, and you never know who's going to figure something out. And this has changed my life, my clients, and a lot of people on my TikTok, I get messages from them that have bought the book and have done the work and stuff, and they love it. So giving people their lives back, it's weird being a trainer, because before I did all this stuff, I wasn't really giving people their lives back. It was just like, I hope Miss Jones loses weight. I don't really. I'm putting these programs together. We'll see how hard she works. But now it's like, I have a feeling we can change your life here. I
Yeah,
think I can get you out of pain. And if you're not in pain, I think I can make you feel buttery smooth in regular life, to where you'll get, oh, so here's what happens too. I want to say this is, in the old adage, Jake, is you join the gym and you say, I hope I lose weight. I hope I get rid of my knee pain. Imagine joining a gym and you get to the point where you go, I wonder how athletic I can get. So no longer do you have a question, you have a statement in your mind. I wonder how athletic I can get. And it's kind of a question, but it's more of a infinite, like you start to realize, holy crap, I can take this as far as I put my effort into it. It's a different process.
that
So
sounds
I'm excited to
Mhm.
get it all done,
that
figure it
That
out.
sounds
sounds
wonderful to
wonderful to
me.
me.
Another
Another
thing, I
thing, I
just had
just
a
had a
quick
quick
note here
note here
because you
because you
said
said
something
something
earlier,
earlier,
made me
made me
think
think
about it.
about it.
Did
Did
you?
you?
I
I
think
think
I
I
watched
watched
you
you
do it
do it
on one
on
of
one of
your
your
TikTok
TikTok
lives.
lives.
Did
Did
you
you
recently
recently
hit?
hit?
It
It
was
was
either a
either a
squat
squat
or a
or a
bench
bench
PR.
PR.
Oh, I've been slowly hitting more and more, which they're not as good as some of them used to be before the injuries, but it's slowly going up. And it's more about just me feeling healthy, because my shoulders are still pretty gunked up as much as I can do, which is wild. But I still don't feel, there's still parts of my body that are old, but for as old as I feel in some ways, it's weird how day-to-day life is so much better, because I don't want to re-injure myself. And it is, but it's weird how protected I feel. But yeah, I've been hitting, it's been just a regular kind of journey up on squat, deadlift, and bench, because I was going to do a powerlifting competition earlier this year, but I realized I need to do one at the end of the year when I'm not so busy. Like the beginning of the year with work, obviously, and all the New Year's people and stuff, it's a lot. But I definitely want to do some powerlifting, not for anybody other than myself, because I like it. Again, it depends on your body. Every client's different. Some people could never care to lift heavy weight. Me being an athlete who's always loved to lift heavy weight and outrun everybody, and out jump everybody, I don't want to bodybuild again because I don't really care to get on stage like that. Um, but never say never. But I would like to power lift and just see, because for my body weight, I'm extremely strong, and I might be able to do some things with that. And just I'm an athlete at heart. And I can't help, but I have to do these things so that I'll push towards something, because it's hard for me to just go to the gym and even do this work, as exciting as it is. It doesn't, I need things to focus on for myself sometimes. And then also, because with this fascia work, I want to see how it responds the body differently. So I spend time powerlifting. I spend time doing the mechanics with bodybuilding. I spend time doing them with like an average person's workout. Like, we'll go through months where I'll do full body 3 times a week and do the mechanics. And I just want to see the different responses, see what heals me, what doesn't, so I can help you guys, help clients and that sort of thing.
All
All
right,
right,
we've
we've
got a
got a
question
question
for you.
for you.
What's that?
We
We
got
got
Irene. What
Irene.
are
What are
some
some
glute
glute
exercises I
exercises I
can
can
try?
try?
Well, with the glutes, a lot of it's going to be holding. So, like we said, it's not the exercises you guys are doing so much, it's how we're going about them. So, if you're doing leg curls, again, the leg curl, make sure you're holding it at the top and fighting it on the way down, slow reps. But even like I said with the curls, so if this is my leg, let's say I'm on a leg curl machine warming up. So, when I warm up, I don't just do reps now. I'll do like one, two, and I don't have a set variation, because again, it depends on how I feel, but I'll do some reps. So say for you guys, 10 reps. And on the 10th rep, I just sit there and hold it. And then I just focus on breathing through my nose, because you can see how much more oxygen you get if you look at the studies, how much more oxygen you get breathing through your nose. And I'm trying to open up and close my rib cage. So I'll do holds. So you could say on the hamstrings with that. I do like the dumbbell for stretching the hamstring. So if you lay on a bench, you have somebody put a dumbbell, but that you need a partner for that usually, unfortunately. So that one's kind of hit or miss, but you put a dumbbell between your feet and then you stretch your legs real good and bring them up. But again, think of the hamstring and the glute action as the same as the bicep. They want to really hold things. So you're going to get better. One, you need to lock your legs out when you're doing the stretches, like are in my book. That'll help really stretch them out. You need to hold things. So squats, hold at the bottom, do pulses at the bottom to stimulate them. Stiff-legged deadlifts, do them locked out as well, and curve your back. But again, make sure that you have a healthy enough back. That's why you got to do the flexibility book first, or do your flexibility so that you can do these things.
Would
Would
you
you
would you
would you
rec- would
rec-
you
would you
recommend
recommend
to
to
build
build
up
up
to
to
that
that
Right.
straight
So if you're
straight-legged
legged
gonna
deadlift?
do
deadlift?
it, this is why the in the book how it shows you the stretches with the legs locked out where I'm standing. You basically do those first, get to where you can lock them out, because if you can't lock them out and then you go try to lock them out with weight, you're gonna have problems. Because when
Yeah.
you lock those legs out too, it releases the lower back and it teaches that back how to move in a curvature and build tension and curvature instead of always having to be straight, because it needs to be able to do both. Because most of the time when you guys are hurting yourselves, is your back straight? No. You're doing some weird movement where your body's in some weird angle and you couldn't build tension in that angle. It's all about balance. Like
Yeah.
we talked about in the first thing, there's balance and it moves in, free will is balance. And then it moves into, you've order and free will, and it moves into chaos and obsession. And that's more philosophical, like we've said. But you want balance in everything. And some things are going to be different balance when it comes to our personalities and stuff. You might be more clean than somebody in those balances. But when it comes to the body is very structural. So just as much as you should be able to, do a fly with your elbow bent, every angle is appropriate, all the way to lockout. So really, it's lockout is a balanced, and then you have your angles in between, and you can do them all and figure
Are
out which ones are the hardest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are
Are
you a
you a
fan
fan
of
of
doing?
doing?
I
I
don't
don't
even
even
know.
know.
I
I
think
think
it's
it's
called
called
a
a
backlift.
backlift.
It's
It's
basically
basically
like a
like a
reverse
reverse
crunch,
crunch,
but
but
you're
you're
leaning
leaning
forward.
forward.
There's
There's
a
a.
it's
It's
not a
not a
machine, but
machine, but
there's
there's
like
like
this
this
thing I
thing I
know
know
Crunch
Crunch
has
has
them
them
where
where
it's
it's
similar
similar
to
to
like
like
the
the
bench where
bench
you
where
do
you do
crunches,
crunches,
but
but
it's
it's
sort of
sort
the
of the
reverse
reverse
where
where
you
you
lean
lean
over
over
it
it
and
and
then
then
basically
basically
lift
lift
up
up
using your
using your
lower
lower
back
back
and
and
upper
upper
glutes.
glutes.
Well, again, it's a machine, so it's something you can warm up on. But all of remember, like we've said before with the body, I think I said this in the last podcast, is doesn't it make sense that you master your body weight before you ever touch a weight?
That
That
used to
used to
be
be
the
the
conventional
conventional
wisdom.
wisdom.
Yeah. So it's you can do machines, you can warm up with them, but you shouldn't finish with them. You should finish with mastery of the body and do some type of body weight stuff, you know. So you can look up calisthenics. As I get my books done, we'll have that stuff. I always get the gyms open. I'll show
Yeah,
more of that. I'll have more of
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
Fusioner
Fusioner
says that
says
he
that he
thinks
thinks
I'm,
I'm
or
or
he
he
or
or
she
she
thinks that
thinks
I'm
that I'm
referring to
referring
the
to the
back
back
hyperextension
hyperextension
machine. I
machine. I
believe
believe
I,
I
well,
well,
it's
it's
not
not
weighted
weighted
though.
though.
It's
It's
just
just a
the
the
one I
one I
use
use
anyway. I
anyway. I
know
know
they
they
have the
have the
weighted
weighted
version of
version of
that
that
though.
though.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
same
same
concept.
concept.
Yeah. If you're talking about the hyperextension back machine, yeah, I mean it's still a machine, but you think most of it too is you guys got to start thinking your fascial lines. So now that you've seen them and you see the anatomy trains lines, so when you're doing that and you're hooking your feet and your legs are straight, right, and then you're curving over the thing, now you can see you're not just using your back. You're working your feet, your calves, your hamstrings, your back.
I
I
usually
usually
feel it in
feel it
my
in my
legs
legs
first.
first.
Yeah. So, but we still want to finish. Like the most dominant thing you could probably do for your back is, like I said, I forget what it's called, but when you're laying on your back and you roll your hands backwards and you make your back body into like a sunset, like you push your hips up.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's a
it's a
bridge, I
bridge, I
think,
think,
or at
or at
Yeah,
least
it's
least
I
like a
I
don't.
know.
back. It's a
Yeah,
Yeah,
back bridge. So instead of a
yeah.
yeah.
plank, because a plank is the front fascial line, and then you're doing that thing. If you can do that mechanically, that back's gonna be pretty healthy because it requires a full body back strength. Handstands are good to learn because you should be able to walk just as much on your hands as you do your feet. I know it sounds silly, but balance dictates that.
No, I've
Seen you
seen you
do it.
do it.
Yeah. So and again, you don't have to. I'm not saying you got to be able to walk. I'm just saying that you'd be encouraged to learn long term how to do a handstand and lock it out and be able to walk a little bit, just as long as you're not in pain. Like I do a
Mhm.
lot of handstand work because it heals my shoulders a lot. But again, you know why I have to do a lot of handstands fascially, Jake? Because as a kid, I used to walk on my hands up and down the basketball court. And so, unfortunately for me, I taught my body that movement at a young age. And now to this day, my body still needs that movement. So, this is what you want to be careful with your kids and stuff, or what you're doing, or what you're just, if you're not working out and you're thinking, I'm going to be a big, strong power lifter. Well, you better plan on doing that stuff because once you train your body to do something, it imprints that into the fascia. So it's hard for a bodybuilder to go to yoga and get healed. It's not saying the yoga doesn't help too much, but for me, like I always use this example. So I had a big knot in my chest one day and we were bench pressing. I couldn't get this knot out stretching. I couldn't get it out yoga. I could feel it. I just knew it was there. It wasn't until, because again, don't think of it as weight, right? Think of everything as tension. I got up to 320 on bench and I did a rep with torque and it popped. Now it wouldn't pop at 140 pounds, it wouldn't pop at 200, it wouldn't pop at 250. But because I used to bench 405 for sets of 10, and my body's so used to lifting heavy weight, it needed 320 in the structure of the mechanic to move that knot out. It's annoying.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
So,
wild.
wild.
so you being an ex-fighter, just remember that's if you trained your body athletically, if you were at your most athletic place as a fighter, Jake, you're gonna have to find a way back.
Because
Like I
like I
said,
said,
I'm
I'm
still
still
training,
training,
but
but
I
I
there
there
was a
was a
period
period
there
there
where I
where I
lost a
lost a
lot of
lot
my
of my
flexibility, and
flexibility,
I'm
and I'm
slowly but
slowly but
surely
surely
I
I
am
am
getting it
getting it
back.
back.
But
But
I
I
think
think
utilizing the
utilizing the
fascia
fascia
training
training
is
is
gonna
gonna
really
really
expedite
expedite
that
that
Yeah.
process.
process.
And you could train a bodybuilder into a yoga person. Just know it'll take a lot of time for the body to reorganize the nervous system, how the structures, but it just takes a long time. So if you loved bodybuilding and you've injured yourself, well, when I get the book done, we'll show you how to mechanically be a healthy bodybuilder and you just relearn how to be one and stop lifting with your ego in that case with them, and if you don't want to be a fight, if you don't want to do what was it, Taekwondo anymore, that's fine, because you've had some time off of it with injuries and stuff. But you might find that some of those movements you have to, you kind of have to, you'll have to see how your body responds.
Oh,
Oh,
to
to
How,
this,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
to
to
this
this
day,
day,
there's
there's
something to
something to
that
that
because
because
to
to
this
this
day,
day,
even because I
because I
do
do
Krav
Krav
Maga
Maga
now,
now,
which
which
is
is
totally
totally
different. But
different. But
even to
even to
this
this
day,
day,
when
when
we
we
spar,
spar,
I'm
I'm
still
still
very
very
leg and
leg and
kick
kick
centric.
centric.
I'm
I'm
just
just
my
my
body
body
naturally
naturally
goes to
goes to
these
these
you
positions.
positions.
see, yeah, because part of it's genetics, your posture and stuff, and who you are,
Oh,
Oh,
and
and
it,
what you
it,
well,
well,
what you
it's
optimize.
yeah,
yeah.
I
I
can
can
attest
attest
this
this
because it's
because it's
exactly
exactly
what you're
what you're
talking
talking
about.
about.
Because when
Because
I
when I
started
started
Taekwondo,
Taekwondo,
I
I
was
was
not
not
as
as
Americans,
Americans,
we're
we're
not
not
really,
really,
most of
most of
us,
us,
we're
we're
not a
not a
very
very
leg
leg
centric
centric
society.
society.
We
We
don't,
don't,
but
but
Taekwondo is
Taekwondo is
like
like
70 to
70 to
80%
80%
legs.
legs.
So
So
you
you
learn,
learn,
especially when
especially
you
when you
start
start
young,
young,
you
you
learn
learn
very
very
quickly.
quickly,
You
you
amend
amend
the
the
way
way
you
you
move your
move your
body
body
because
because
you're
you're
using
using
your
your
legs
legs
so
so
much
much
more
more
often.
often.
Right.
So
So
that's why
that's
I
why I
said,
said,
Because we
yeah,
sit so damn much. I mean, if
well,
we
well,
yeah,
yeah,
sit so much, it's killing us.
yeah.
yeah.
But
But
even
even
so,
so,
because of
because
the
of the
Taekwondo
Taekwondo
training,
training,
even though
even
I've
though I've
lost a lot
lost
of
a lot
my
of my
flexibility,
flexibility,
I to
I to
this
this
day
day
can
can
like
like
flamingo
flamingo
plant
plant
on
on
one
one
leg
leg
and
and
I'm
I'm
comfortable
comfortable
for
for
almost
almost
indefinitely.
indefinitely.
Like it
Like it
will
will
eventually
eventually
get
get
tired,
tired,
but I
but I
don't
don't
really
really
lose
lose
my
my
balance.
balance.
So
So
Right.
to
to
throw
throw
a,
a,
yeah,
yeah,
but
but
because of the
because of the
Taekwondo,
Taekwondo,
to
to
throw
throw
a
a
series of
series of
kicks
kicks
is
is
not
not
complicated for
complicated for
me,
me,
whereas
whereas
somebody
somebody
who's
who's
starting
starting
cold
cold
might have
might have
some
some
trouble
trouble
depending
depending
upon
upon
what
what
their
their
background
background
was.
was.
And exactly, depending on what their background is. And this is why we see people they do sports in high school, then they go to college and maybe they do some sports, maybe not, but then they go sit at a computer. And after 4 or 5 years, and I've dealt with these people over the years, it's like they were a big athlete and they're in a lot of pain because they were very athletic and then just got a sitting job and or got a job that's very stressful with the sitting and they're not doing much because most people are sitting. I think the average American still sits about 13 hours a day, so we know people are sitting a lot. And the more that you did as a kid, the more you're going to have to keep up with. And it's not your fault. I mean, you didn't know when you were a kid playing basketball and doing all these things was going to be a contributor to how athletic you would need to continue to perform the rest of your life. But my point is the kid that didn't do any athletics as a kid and sat on a computer and built in that posture, he's not in as near as much pain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And that's what
yeah,
I
yeah,
see with the clients I work with, because I have very poor structural people that are in no pain, but they've never really worked out. And it's not until they start working out sometimes that they're like, oh, now I have pain. You're making it worse. And I'm like, no, your nerves were dead. And I'm opening up your nerves and organizing your structure. Now you can feel how imbalanced you were, and just give it time. So
sounds
sounds
fantastic.
fantastic.
I
I
will
will
send
send
you
you
those
those
plans.
plans.
And I'm
And I'm
sorry,
sorry,
somebody
somebody
just
just
told
told
me
me
I've
I've
had two
had two
people
people
tell me
tell
I
me I
have an
have an
echo,
echo,
which
which
is
is
odd
odd
because
because
I
I
don't
don't
hear it
hear
on
it on
my
my
end,
end,
but when
but when
two
two
people
people
tell
tell
me,
me,
I
I
do,
do
like,
like
I
I
know
know
they're
they're
right.
right.
So I
So I
apologize
apologize
for
for
that.
that.
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
why
why
it's
it's
happened.
happened.
This has
This has
happened
happened
once
once
before.
before.
I
I
don't
don't
know. I
know. I
got a
got
new
a new
computer
computer
for
for
this
this
setup.
setup.
This
This
setup
setup
worked
worked
the
the
exact
exact
same
same
way,
way,
but to
but to
this
this
day,
day,
sometimes
sometimes
I will
I will
start
start
Zoom
Zoom
and
and
even my
even my
camera
camera
will
will
be
be
like a
like a
different
different
frame
frame
rate.
rate.
It's
It's
weird.
weird.
I
I
can't,
can't,
I'm
I'm
figuring it
figuring
out.
it
So
out.
I
So I
apologize
apologize
for
for
that. And
that. And
thanks
thanks
for
for
letting me
letting me
know.
know.
But
But
good
good
segue.
segue.
You
You
mentioned your
mentioned your
TikTok,
TikTok,
and I
and I
apologize,
apologize,
everyone, if
everyone,
you're
if you're
watching the
watching the
live
live
stream.
stream.
I
I
didn't
didn't
put the
put the
link
link
in
in
there,
there,
but
but
I
I
will
will
put
put
the
the
link
link
to
to
his
his
TikTok.
TikTok.
But
But
his
his
website
website
is the
is the
first
first
link in
link
the
in the
description.
description.
His
His
TikTok, if
TikTok,
you're
if you're
watching
watching
this
this
after the
after the
live,
live,
it'll be
it'll
the
be the
second
second
link in
link
the
in the
description.
description.
Definitely
Definitely
check
check
out
out
Kyler's
Kyler's
TikTok
TikTok
because,
because,
like I
like I
said,
said,
you do
you do
lives
lives
daily,
daily,
right?
right,
Or
or
semi
pretty
daily.
much
semi-daily.
every day, either in the morning and afternoon, as best I can. It was more, but I'm still on 4 or 5 times a week, and people are more than welcome to ask questions, see how I'm moving through things. And that's usually the best way to help people for free or just in general right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most
most
definitely. And
definitely. And
like I
like I
said,
said,
if
if
you're
you're
watching
watching
this
this
after the
after the
fact and
fact
you
and you
have any
have any
questions for
questions for
Tyler, Taylor,
Tyler,
because I
because
was
I was
about to
about
say
to say
TikTok,
TikTok,
that's
that's
why.
why
You
you
can
can
hit him
hit him
up
up
on
on
TikTok,
TikTok,
or
or
if you
if you
want to
want to
leave a
leave a
comment
comment
below,
below,
I can
I can
pass it
pass it
along to
along to
Tyler and
Tyler
he
and
can
he can
answer it.
answer it.
But
But
definitely hit
definitely
him
hit
up
him
on
up on
TikTok and
TikTok and
follow him
follow him
because
because
it's
it's
great
great
content.
content.
Appreciate it, man. I'm trying my best. We'll get there.
And
And
buy the
buy the
book.
book.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
definitely
buy the
buy the
book.
book.
I
I
can
can
attest to
attest
it.
to it.
It's
It's
totally
totally
worth
worth
it.
it.
And it's
Um,
a speaker book. It's just flexibility. So don't think it's everything. I know some people got confused and thought it was everything. It's just flexibility. So, but again, get good at that. And then when the second book comes out, it's going to be a whole lot of stuff. It's going to be pretty much everything I teach as a trainer. So it's including nutrition, what water I would tell you to drink, what to put in your water. I mean, it's everything I can think of. So then I can just have one book and then you guys can just eat it up.
yeah, I'm
Yeah, I'm
stoked for
stoked for
that.
that.
I'm
I'm
very
very
stoked for
stoked
the
for the
second
second
book.
book.
That
That
being
being
said, is
said,
there
is there
anything
anything
else you
else you
want to
want to
add? Or
add?
are
Are
you
you
ready to
ready to
wrap it
wrap
up?
it up
Because we've
because
been
we've been
going
I think
going
almost
I'm
almost
two
good,
2
man. I
hours.
hours?
think we've talked a lot. So, and and we can do it again here as we get a chance. And maybe next time, maybe we do something in a better place where we can physically go through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
would.
would,
Like I
like I
said,
said,
I'm
I'm
down
down
to
to
just
just
gotta
gotta
make
make
time
time
for it.
for it.
I'm
I'm
down to
down to
come
come
down and
down and
do a
do a
workout or
workout or
two.
two, and
Maybe
maybe
we
we
can
can
record
record
something,
something.
or
Or
I'm
I'm
still
still
fighting. I
fighting. I
think you
think you
should
should
definitely.
definitely.
I
I
think you
think you
should
should
do at
do at
least a
least a
monthly
monthly
podcast,
podcast,
man.
man.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
peer
peer
pressure
pressure
you a
you a
bit.
bit.
I
I
I
know
know
need
you're
to
a
you're
do
a
a
busy
lot
busy
of
guy.
guy.
things.
I
I
know.
know.
I know
I know
you're a
you're a
busy
busy
guy. I
guy. I
feel
feel
your
your
pain.
pain.
But
But
so
We're
yeah,
just not
I
good
will.
at this stuff. I need to do more though. But what I was thinking is we could even live feed and I could set up the camera so that we could go through it even with us not being in person, is what
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Well,
Well,
So
first of
first of
all, I
all, I
disagree
disagree
that you're
that you're
not
not
good at
good at
this
this
because
because
well, I'm not good at
you
you
have.
have.
everything. So
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we
Well,
can
we can
help with
help with
that.
that.
We
well,
can
we're
We
too
can
help
help
with
with
busy.
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
no,
I
I
totally
totally
get it.
get it.
It's
It's
I
I
find
find
my
my
biggest
biggest
struggle
struggle
with
with
anything,
anything,
as
as
far
far
as
as
physically
physically
like
like
training
training
goes,
goes,
is
is
time.
time.
That's
That's
my
my
biggest
biggest
problem,
problem,
Yeah.
is
is
having the
having the
time.
time.
If I
If I
had
had
more
more
time,
time,
I'd
I'd
do a
do a
lot
lot
more
more
stuff.
stuff.
And I
And
know
I know
that
that
sounds like
sounds
a
like a
cop
cop
out, but
out,
I'm
but I'm
sure
sure
you
you
can
can
understand.
understand.
Time is
Time
a
is a
very
very
valuable
valuable
and
and
scarce
scarce
asset
asset when
when you're a
you're a
busy
busy
person.
person.
Yeah. And everybody's taking up my time, it seems, in all different aspects. So
Right.
Right.
we'll figure it
Well,
Well,
out.
yeah,
yeah,
definitely,
definitely,
definitely.
definitely.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
man,
and
I'll
I'll
send you
send you
those
those
workouts
workouts
shortly,
shortly,
and
and
take your
take your
time.
time.
But
But
I
I
would be
would be curious
curious to
to
see
see
how
how
you
you
would
would
tweak
tweak
them.
them.
For sure.
Um,
Um,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
everybody,
everybody,
thank
thank
you
you
for
for
tuning
tuning
into the
into the
Arete
Arete
podcast. I
podcast. I
actually
actually
think
think
this
this
one
one
has
has
the
the
most
most
like
like
in
in
real
real
time
time
live
live
viewers
viewers
that
that
we've
we've
ever
ever
had
had
before.
before.
So I
So I
hope
hope
that
that
translates
translates
into
into
more
more
views.
views.
Oh,
Oh,
hang
hang
on.
on.
We're
We're
buying the
buying the
book
book
for a
for a
new
new
lifestyle,
lifestyle,
waiting for
waiting for
book
book
number
number
two.
2.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think you're
think you're
right,
right,
Fusioner.
Fusioner.
But the
But the
weird
weird
thing
thing
is it
is it
doesn't
doesn't
happen
happen
every
every
time.
time.
So
So
I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
check that
check
out.
that out.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
bringing that
bringing
to
that
my
to my
attention.
attention.
But like
But
I
like I
said,
said,
thank you
thank you
everybody for
everybody for
checking
checking
out
out
the
the
Arte
Arete
podcast.
podcast.
Hopefully, if
Hopefully,
you're
if you're
not
not
subscribed, you
subscribed, you
will.
will.
Please
Please
like
like
and
and
share,
share,
especially
especially
this
this
video,
video,
because
because
this is
this is
information.
information.
You'll
You'll
notice we
notice we
didn't do
didn't
a
do a
sponsor in
sponsor in
this
this
video
video
because
because
this
this
one is
one is
all
all
about the
about the
information. I
information. I
guess
guess
technically
technically
Self
Self
Health
Health
Fitness
Fitness
is
is
the
the
sponsor,
sponsor.
but
But
like I
like I
said, this
said,
is
this is
all
all
Appreciate
about
it.
about, you know,
helping
helping
people
people
get
get
better,
better,
healthier.
healthier.
So
So
definitely
definitely
check
check
out
out
Tyler's
Tyler's
website.
website.
Definitely
Definitely
check out
check
his
out his
TikTok
TikTok
and
and
buy the
buy the
book.
book.
You
You
will
will
not
not
regret it.
regret it.
And we
And
will
we will
see
see
you
you
guys
guys
next
next
month.
month.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for
stopping
stopping
by.
by.
And
Yeah,
thank you,
Thank
thanks
you,
for
Kyler,
having
Tyler,
for
me.
for
coming
coming
on.
on.
Yeah.